Chapter 346, Star Wings. Chapter 346, Star Wings. Above the desolate group of palaces, the curtain of light burst out, producing an explosive sound. In that echoing sound, the moon disappeared. The sun and the stars were still there, but the moon had vanished into thin air. The disappearance of the moon led to disharmony of the scene. Tang Yuanan raised his head looking at the scene before him with a pale face and exclaimed, "This is not good." Shurian didn't understand either as he held his face up looking at the halo and asked, "What is happening?" "The Moon Island has been destroyed." Tang Yuanan gritted his teeth and angrily said, "At least, the formation on the Moon Island has been smashed down. Otherwise, the halo would not change like that. The Moon God is still on the island. I don't know what her current situation is. I have to go there to see. The situation in the Endless Sea is now extremely chaotic. Perhaps I have been staying here for too long." After he spoke, Tang Yuanan was about to turn and leap up. Shurian immediately spoke up right before Tang Yuanan left, "Bring me with you. I don't want to stay here either." The more chaotic the Endless Sea was, the greater the chance he could have. He wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to reinforce his realm and borrow the dead's energy to strengthen himself. After waking up from his marvelous state, he realized that the beam of profound chi light had stopped absorbing the energy from the swirl in his abdomen. Although the power which had been created by the fusion of the Holy Spirit God, the ice-cold flame, and the earth flame, was huge, it still faded away with time. He understood that the reason he was able to compete with Ma Chidun and freeze the elder of the Three Gods sect was for the mysterious effect of the swirl created by the integration of the Holy Spirit God, the ice-cold flame, and the earth flame. The icy power of the ice-cold flame could transform an island into an icy river, while the earth flame was like 10,000-year burning fires which had accumulated the power of the sky and earth. Meanwhile, the Holy Spirit God had been created by fusing with the icy crystal bone dragon and had gathered a large amount of force of faith from many believers of the Holy Spirit sect simultaneously. However, this force didn't really belong to him. He vaguely felt that the fusion of the three great living forms would soon end and that their energy would quickly fade away. Once their energy separated from the swirl, his true ability would be exposed. Taking advantage of the time when these three great living forms were still in that swirl, and when he still had the strength, he had to take part in the chaotic war happening in the Endless Sea. He needed to kill some people to get their aura through the mysterious martial spirit so that the mutation of the martial spirit in his body could be completed. Looking at his red-purple right arm, Shurian felt excited, thinking that the petrifaction martial spirit could be completed this time. "You want to go up there?" Tang Yuanan asked as he was going to the transfer formation in the middle of the desolate palaces, but suddenly turned around and frowned. 7 days ago, when you and Ma Chidun fought, the group of Gu Shao, Yu Qin, Chao Jilan, and Man Gu were on the mountain peak of the Gu family and watched your entire battle through the Huin Tin. Your strong potential agitated them. I could feel their fear. 7 days after I brought you away, the Gu family and the Heaven Lake Divine Land all knew that the pagans who had formerly followed you were now under the Demon Dweller's command. They immediately united with other forces in the Endless Sea to hunt you down. Shurian's face suddenly darkened. Presently, in the Kiara Sea, the Demon Dwellers are engaged in many fights with all of the forces from all over. If you come out this time, I think that both sides will be very excited to target you. As long as they find your trail, they will send their masters to kill you. Even though you now look powerful, I know that it is not your true strength. I believe that you cannot maintain that power forever. Once this force disappears, you will soon be killed." Tang Yuanan looked solemn and sincerely advised, "Stay here for now and wait until the situation is stable, then you can leave. Furthermore, after going out, it's best for you to leave the Endless Sea quickly. Momentarily, the Endless Sea cannot cover for you. I need to go out to the battlefields." Shurian didn't want to explain, and also explain the mystery of the martial spirit in his body. He stepped inside the transfer formation. Tang Yuanan was astonished. "I have my reasons." After having contemplated for a while, Shurian looked at Tang Yuanan and said, "Don't be worried. I will not die that easily. On the contrary, those who want to kill me have to pay a high price. Tang Yuanan seemed to be puzzled and carefully looked at Shuryen. After a long while, he nodded and said, "It seems that you already have a plan of your own. If so, I will not be reluctant anymore." Without saying anything further, 81 sunbeams suddenly burst out from Tang Yuanan's body. Every ray of light accurately hit the transfer formation. A group of dazzling lights flashed up. Tang Yuanan and Shuryen left the seabed and appeared on a deserted island. The deep sky was filled with countless glittering stars. When each star flashed, it seemed that some kind of energy was descending from the sky and was infiltrating Shuryen's body. In the night, Shuryen raised his head to look up at the sky, feeling the absorption of the star martial spirit toward the starlight in the sky. He slightly triggered his mind and realized that many dots of light were moving inside his heart, coincidentally following the principle of the sky and earth. Ah! Shuryen's face changed as he looked at the moon, which was like a silver plate in the sky. He couldn't help but scream, that is. In the night, the silver moonlight appeared and quickly gathered, creating a big flow of light, projecting a beautiful figure that was floating around in the air. That pretty figure was drifting around in the moonlight. The small charming body was enveloped in a curtain of light, looking like a legendary fairy in a dream that gave people an unreal feeling. She seemed to be able to absorb the essence of the moonlight and gather it. Although he was standing tens of thousands of miles away, Shuryen still felt the vastness of the misty fantasy and felt that the moon's reflection was not real. The new moon god is indeed an outstanding talent. Tang Yuanan was convulsive. His eyes were flooded with joy and excitement. She has entered the spirit realm. With the anomaly of the moon martial spirit which absorbed 1,000 years of the moonlight, once she enters the spirit realm, she can be compared with the innate heroes like Chao Qiudao and Yang Yitian of the Endless Sea. This is really the best time of our god sect. The spirit realm. Shuryen dazedly looked at that vague, beautiful figure under the moonlight and then mumbled to himself with a lower voice before looking at Tang Yuanan again and saying, "I think your worry is redundant. If she has reached the spirit realm, she will surely be safe. It is obvious. Unless Chao Qiudao and Yang Yitian take action, no one in the Endless Sea can harm her." Tang Yuanan laughed joyfully and then turned around to look at Shuryen. "You have met her before, haven't you?" "I am sure you two have met. When you arrived at the Sun Island, she wanted to see you, but after that, forget it. I have something to do." Shuryen interrupted Tang Yuanan, turned his head around to identify the direction, and then said, "I am going to the Snow Dragon Island to see the current situation over there." "You don't know how to aerial travel, do you?" Tang Yuanan was astonished. Shuryen beamed a faint smile, activating the star martial spirit. People could only see many dots of starlight gathered around his body, forming into a thin circle of light. As soon as the circle of light had been created, Shuryen controlled it and divided it into two, forming into two wings which were as thin as that of a locust. In just a split second, he had leaped up to the sky and turned into a beautiful starlight, flying away. Star wings. This is the derivation of the star shield. It took advantage of the division of the star shield to form a pair of starlight wings and borrowed the star power to help Nirvana realm warriors pierce the sky and fly freely. It was indeed wonderful. Under innumerable stars, when displaying the star wing, Shuryen could feel many star powers that he hadn't recognized before pouring into the star wings. To use the star wings, it required the star martial spirit. Once the star wings were condensed and refined, they would keep absorbing the star power from the sky, which helped Shuryen fly. Therefore, he didn't consume any of the profound chi when using the star wings to fly. The speed of the star wings depended on the magnitude of the starlight contained within. The stronger the star power was, the faster the speed of the star wings could be. When all the starlight in the star wings were stimulated, it would form the star fleeting, which could move 1,000 miles in just a blink. In the night sky, Shuryen urged the star wings to head to the Snow Dragon Island. He looked at the sky from time to time, feeling the star power's infusion, quietly activating the star manipulation, trying a method of controlling the starlight. Beautiful combinations of the star formations continually emerged from within his palm. While flying, he also used his mind to perceive the star's principles. A violent life fluctuation suddenly came in from the reef area, which was 800 miles ahead. Indulging in the comprehension, Shiryan suddenly woke up, his sea of consciousness slightly moved as his host's soul spread out the soul consciousness. A marvelous feeling appeared within his heart all of a sudden. He found himself being as though he had countless eyes which allowed him to see the entire scene clearly with the spread of his soul consciousness. In all directions, the sky was clear and the sea was blue. Wherever the soul consciousness passed through, the scene of those places openly emerged in his mind. It was an amazing kind of comprehension. Previously, when he had released his soul consciousness, he could still have perceived something, but it was like the blind groping for things, as he could only feel the object and perceive the existence of it. It was different now. Wherever this soul consciousness was, it was like he himself was present there, as he could clearly see every single commotion. Each flow of soul consciousness was like one heaven eye of his. As soon as his soul consciousness spread through the area with familiar life fluctuation, he suddenly recognized a few acquaintances. Chapter 347, Slaughter. Chapter 347, Slaughter. On a boat of the Spirit Treasure Wonderland sailing in the sea, the group of Chenduo and Dongfang He was fighting with around 10 demon dwellers of the Black Scales tribe. The 10 demon dwellers of the Black Scales tribe were covered with black scales, and their cultivation base was not low. All of them were holding sharp weapons of the demon area, constantly attacking Chenduo and Dongfang He. Among these demon dwellers, there was a guy with a cultivation base similar to Chenduo's, the Sky Realm. He was holding a big curved horn. This curved horn was obviously from a demon beast. It was 3 meters long and could produce many ear-piercing sounds, hurting many disciples of the Spirit Treasure Wonderland so much that they had to cover their ears and screamed out in agony. Chenduo's fingers were filled with many rings. He stood on the boat motionlessly while his rings flashed up with plenty of colorful lights. People could see a small silver sword, 3 blue square stones, 1 red fireball respectively hanging in front of his chest, behind his back, and on the top of his head. These 3 strange secret treasures seemed to have some spiritual relation with Chenduo. Following his mind, these secret treasures transformed, rotated, and sometimes flew toward the demon dwellers who were besieging and bombarding his group with their attacks. The 3 beautiful square blue stones were only moving around the top of his head, scattering out blue lights that were wrapping around him. The red fireball and the small silver sword took turns to besiege and attack the demon dweller who was holding the curved horn. Holding the curved horn in his hand and waving it violently in the air, the demon dweller of the Black Scales tribe furiously roared and didn't seem to be intimidated by Chenduo's attacks. His curved horn looked to be quite heavy and didn't seem to be easily broken by anything. Chenduo had to scream out every time his small silver sword collided with the curved horn. Chenduo focused his power mainly on the demon dweller with the curved horn. The secret treasures on his body flashed up from time to help the Spirit Treasure Wonderland's disciples around him. When he saw them encountering danger, he immediately used his secret treasures to help them. As Dongfang's cultivation base was lower than that of Chenduo, his opponents were usually the Nirvana Realm demon dwellers. The other 5 or 6 disciples of the Spirit Treasure Wonderland, who were probably Chenduo's servants, only had the Disaster Realm cultivation base. Hence, they looked extremely panicked as they seemed to lack brutal combat experience. Currently, there were 3 corpses of the Spirit Treasure Wonderland's disciples on the boat. Their flesh and blood mixed, which looked like they had been crushed and torn apart by the demon dwellers, and thus, their bodies were not intact. There were 2 demon dwellers' dead bodies of the Black Scales tribe floating on the sea. They had probably died not long ago. Blood was still gushing out. 2 females of the Yin-Yang Wonderland, who were wearing beautiful clothes and exposing their appealing bodies through their thin blouses, had blushing faces, and their eyes were flooded with panic. They were covering their mouths but couldn't stop themselves from screaming. Shiryan released his star wings and quietly hovered above the heads of the people who were fighting below. He beamed a faint smile while his face remained cold. Chinduo suddenly felt something was wrong and couldn't help but raise his head to look up at the sky and frighteningly cry out loud, "Shurian." Dongfeng's face changed in fear. He suddenly grinned, looked at the demon dwellers in front of him and said, "That guy is Shurian of the Yang family. I am sure that you have also received the order to kill him at all cost." He pointed to Shurian, who was hovering in the sky, disclosing his identity. After hearing so, the two demon dweller leaders who were fighting with Chinduo and He subconsciously held their heads up looking at Shurian and then quickly talked to the rest of the Black Scales tribe's demon dwellers. After that, all of the ferocious Sky Realm demon dwellers brutally roared, ignoring Chinduo and storming toward Shurian. Chinduo's fat face shook while he kept sneering. He didn't hesitate either, quickly pulling out his small silver sword and the red fireball. They flew up to the sky together and were aimed at Shurian. The other two Sky Realm warriors, who were fighting with the demon dwellers, also changed their targets after hearing what He had said. Shurian had initially intended to play the role of a fisherman. However, as he saw both sides were taking actions at the same time, he suddenly laughed with a cold look on his face. "That is very good. Starlight." As soon as he triggered his mind, his body changed anomalously and instantly descended on the boat. The surging power from the swirl in his abdomen, which had been created by the fusion of the Holy Spirit God, the Earth Flame, and the ice-cold flame, burst out. The tremendous power quickly ran along his left arm. After a short moment, the skin and flesh of his left arm cracked open, which was extremely painful. The power from the fusion of those three living forms was incredibly mighty and far surpassed his limit. These energies flowed to his left arm, which caused him to encounter the backfire. Even his bones popped a brittle sound and apparently broke afterward. The life seal. This violent force finally fell into his palm, and each huge handprint appeared one by one. 7 handprints, each of which was as big as a mountain with beautiful crystal radiance, instantly stacked over each other, while the tremendous power soared up many times. 7 seals merged into one. The crystal lights of the huge handprint shot out everywhere. An earth-shaking power appeared. The life seal with its overwhelming, destructive power rushed toward Chinduo, which made him extremely frightened. His 10 fingers moved crazily. Different kinds of the best secret treasures flew out, forming more than 10 formation techniques to resist one strike of the life seal strenuously. However, the life seal, which had been formed by the 3 living forms, was unbreakable. It instantly smashed down all formation techniques. The seal's impetuous power dashed straight to Chinduo's fat body. Boom! Chinduo's obese body suddenly flew up and broke the boat's terrace, which was like shells shooting straight up to the sky. Blood splashed everywhere. Some disciples of the Spirit Treasure Wonderland that were standing next to Chinduo also couldn't escape from the same consequence. They were crushed into meat pies by the life seal and died on the spot. The 2 female disciples of the Yin Yang Wonderland, who were as beautiful as flowers, were scared to death, screaming loudly while quickly avoiding that blow. As these 2 girls were quite far away from Chinduo, they were lucky enough to escape from this fatal strike. As He was opposite to Chinduo, he didn't get affected by that strike, but his face was ashen and his heart was frozen like ice. Having launched only one blow, Shurian had brutally killed Chinduo. Without waiting for Chinduo's fat body to fall into the sea, Shurian suddenly flashed up and instantly appeared behind He. "You dare to touch me? I will make you regret this." He screamed in fear. Shurian remained as calm as if he didn't hear this threat. He lifted his right arm, launching a blow on the opponent's nape. Bang! He's head burst like a watermelon, splattering everywhere. Blood splashed all over Shurian's body. After He had died, Shurian kept displaying the starlight, following the moving trajectory of the stars to continue the slaughter. Horrendous power on his right arm was quickly activated. The strange thing was that his arm was safe and sound, not having a backfire, which was different from what happened to his left arm. The life seal appeared again and instantly covered Chinduo. Chinduo's body had been crushed into pieces of flesh meat, scattering everywhere. In an instant, Chinduo and Dongfang He were easily killed. Shuryen slightly laughed, turned around looking at the flock of demon dwellers. However, after turning around, he realized that more than 10 demon dwellers were all long gone. They must have run a few miles away already. The Sky Realm demon dweller, who had formerly fought with Chinduo, threw the curved horn out while his body was still in the air. That curved horn turned into a bunch of demon lights, bringing along an unprecedented momentum. With a quick glance, its power seemed to be pretty strong. Raising his eyebrows, Shuryen was ready to take action, but then realized that the curved horn which was approaching him had mysteriously disappeared. At the same time, that Sky Realm warrior had also vanished. Releasing his soul consciousness, Shuryen detected that the flock of demon dwellers appeared to be 10 miles away, using all of their effort to escape. He coldly harumphed within his heart. He wasn't in a hurry to chase after them. Instead, he collected the dead bodies of Chinduo and the others, throwing them to a corner of the boat. After that, he stood motionlessly, looking at 2 beautiful female disciples of the Yin-Yang Wonderland with strange eyes. Don't kill us. We will serve you. One of them licked her red lips, uttered with a soft voice, but she couldn't hide the fear in her eyes. The body of the other one trembled, slightly gritting her teeth while her face was pale. Shuryen's fiery cruelty frightened these 2 girls out of their wits. They didn't have any idea of how to escape. They could only use their godsend properties to beg for their lives. Shuryen didn't say a word. His eyes were cold without any emotion. He quietly absorbed the auras of the group of Chinduo and Dongfang He. After one had died, the aura would disappear shortly, returning to heaven and earth. Therefore, he had to absorb the aura before it disappeared. Otherwise, if he missed this best time, he would get nothing. Because of this reason, he hadn't hurriedly chased after the demon dwellers when he saw that they had run away. Chinduo had the Sky Realm cultivation base. Dongfang He was in the second sky of the Nirvana realm. Together, with the other Disaster Realm disciples of the Spirit Treasure Wonderland, their auras satisfied Shuryen very much. The aura from Chinduo's body was several times much more than that of the others. Shuryen could feel pain when Chinduo's aura seeped into his meridians, and thus, he knew how powerful it was. The auras of Dongfang He and the other disciples had been entirely absorbed while only 1/3 of Chinduo's aura had gone into Shuryen's body. That made Shuryen extremely pleased. After a while, when the group of Chinduo and Dongfang He became dry mummies, Shuryen satisfyingly released a sigh. He then suddenly moved to the 2 female disciples of the Yin-Yang Wonderland. With each of them in hand, he activated the star wings and flew away, disappearing in a blink. Chapter 348, Mutating Again. Chapter 348, Mutating Again. Reef Area. Looking at the mummies lying on the broken boat of the Spirit Treasure Wonderland, the faces of the 5 Spirit Treasure Wonderland's warriors were grave and darkened. The leader, who was the Elder Su Hao of the Spirit Treasure Wonderland, took off the rings on Chinduo's fingers one by one, and then murmured, "Elder Chinduo, what kind of demon dwellers did you encounter that you couldn't even escape?" As being also one of the elders of the Spirit Treasure Wonderland, Su Hao knew Chinduo's tricks as well as his secret treasures. Some of them could help the user instantly get out 1,000 miles away from the battlefield. Chinduo was a cautious person. If he didn't see that he could win, he would use his secret treasure to flee right away. Besides, he also had Dongfang He of the Dongfang family, who was famous for his ruthlessness and also had some life-saving secret treasures. The death of these 2 guys frightened Su Hao very much. After having examined the situation carefully, he took out a Yin stone and reported the situation. But he was dead. Even though it was 1 sea away, the news of Chinduo's death was quickly transmitted to the Spirit Treasure Wonderland in the Blackwater Sea. After having received the news, the palace master of the Spirit Treasure Wonderland, Chiosun, immediately contacted Gu Shao. "It's Shuryen." On the Thousand Swords Peak of the Gu family, when Gu Shao carefully listened to Chiosun explaining the situation, Chao Jilan instantly reacted and said with astonishment, "How can you know it was him?" Gu Shao stroked the 3B-long sword and looked at a cluster of white clouds in the sky. His 2 fingers slightly moved and the blue sword instantly shot out, piercing. Another god sword. The god swords on the Thousand Swords Peak were like a living resonance, bursting out into strange sounds. The sword lights flashed up under the moonlight. The sword lights in the sky above the Thousand Swords Peak were interwoven with each other, creating a brilliant sword curtain. The sword aura was sharp and it could make the auras of heaven and earth shake. Song of the Divine Sword. When we entered the chasm battlefield, we had fought with Shuryen. The warriors who died under his hands all had the same appearance. The auras of their bodies disappeared, and they became dry corpses. Chao Jilan gently released a light sigh. Her beautiful eyes flashed a trace of stress, but she finally spoke up. This is probably a kind of evil secret technique, or it might be caused by some secret treasure. Chen Duo and Dong Fenghe used to have conflicts with him when they were on Sun Island. Tang Yuannan had covered for him. This Shuryen will not have mercy if he is strong enough to kill his opponents. Looking at the formation technique on the Thousand Swords Peak, Gu Shao slightly nodded. All right, I will inform this news of Shuryen's appearance in the Endless Sea to other forces and tell them to be aware of his whereabouts. Even if he has the God Realm cultivation base, as long as his trail is revealed, he cannot escape from the pursuits from all directions, not to mention the fact that demon dwellers were also searching for him. Chao Jilan was helpless and wanted to say something but finally decided to keep silent. Only her eyelids slightly shivered. Looking at the twinkling stars of the night, she had a surging feeling of bitterness within her heart. Following her family's orders, she had to realize the reality in the struggle of reason and emotion. And her reason had won. On a crumbled rock heap, there were dark red rocks with odd shapes scattered everywhere. Under the moonlight and the starlight, these rocks were like phantoms lurking in the warriors' hearts. 2 graceful female bodies were lying down on a flat rock. Their clothes had been torn apart. They were lying on their side on the rock, their faces reddened. They were powerlessly gasping for breath while gazing at the mesmerizing sky with dazed eyes. 10 meters away from there, Shuryen was sitting on a square stone with his bare upper body. He slowly closed his eyes while some red lights were moving on his body. Between him and the 2 female disciples of the Spirit Treasure Wonderland was a pile of torn clothes. Under the starlight, Shuryen looked solemn while he was cultivating in the selfless realm, not paying attention to the situation around him. Nobody knew what he was condensing with all of his strength. Vague white mist floated around him without dispersing, moving along with the sea breeze like drifting clouds. A long while later, the 2 female disciples of the Spirit Treasure Wonderland had recovered a little bit of their strength, leaning their back against the rock, exchanging looks. They saw traces of teeth and scratches on each other's breasts. However, they didn't feel embarrassed as it was a normal thing and wasn't worthy for them to be angry. The wild scene earlier flashed across their minds. Shuryen had been like a violent beast violating them. His glowing red eyes had extremely frightened them. The 2 of them quietly looked at Shuryen, who was meditating from a distance. Although they didn't say anything, they were using their eyes to communicate. Gradually, a trace of ruthlessness appeared in their eyes as they felt that this was their only chance. One of them attentively observed Shuryen's commotions, while the other one sneakily gathered her profound chi, restored the strength of her numb limbs, and then quietly stood up. Suddenly, these 2 girls leaped up to the sky. A jade dagger and bronze brooch simultaneously shot out icy lights toward Shuryen. When their attacks almost hit Shuryen, the starlight abruptly appeared, instantly condensing into the star shield. Countless star points moved accordingly to the mysterious trajectory of the star shield, shortly converging to form a fist-sized star point. The 2 girls' attack sharply hit right at that point of light. The star point burst out. Plenty of broken smaller star points followed the dagger and the brooch to penetrate their bodies. Boom! The soft bodies of the 2 girls from the Spirit Treasure Wonderland suddenly trembled as their bones burst out like firecrackers. Everything was crushed, even their internal organs were fragmented. Their paralyzed bodies fell on the ground. The ruthlessness in their eyes had all gone. Fear from their souls spread out all over their bodies while their auras were instantly emptied out, becoming two shriveled bodies. Shuryen, who was sitting upright, cultivating devotedly on the square rock, suddenly opened his eyes. He threw a glance at the two girls' corpses and beamed a sneer from the corner of his mouth. He then slowly closed his eyes again and continued his devoted cultivation. Many rays of red-purple light on his left arm were moving inside his muscles, making the left arm much heavier as if it had been tied up with 1,000 kilograms of rocks. The red-purple light on his left arm was becoming more and more beautiful. Shuryen's body slightly trembled. Even his sea of consciousness was also compulsive. His left arm became purple-red. The strange, mysterious force and profound chi in his entire body had fused with each other, slowly transforming his two arms. Mutant martial spirit. Once the mutation started, it couldn't stop. Unless it had absorbed all the peculiar force and his profound chi, it would not end. The mysterious force at 720 acupuncture points and the profound chi crazily spewed out and then turned into many flows of light which moved like lightning, quickly condensing the fusion at his two arms and carrying on with a marvelous transformation. The profound chi ancient tree in the middle of the swirl now became vague. With the loss of profound chi, it turned to be transparent, gradually shrank, and completely disappeared in the end. Shuryen was still silent, indulging in the mutation of the martial spirit. Under the moonlight, the moon god Ouyang Lu Shuang was like a moon fairy. The moonlight covered her entire body while she was silently meditating in the middle of the bright lights. On the moon island, numerous demon dwellers from the fourth demon area with brutal and bloodthirsty eyes all raised their heads looking up at the sky. Two demon masters, Cinda and Erig, were standing on the bone boat, divine craft demon god. They came here from the sun island. Under the moonlight, the moon god seemed to be immersed in a miraculous scene and didn't know that the enemy was coming close. With the moonlight enclosing her body, she was indulging in an immortal perception. The white-bone divine craft demon god shook violently. On the bottom of the boat, Jiahani's body, which was lying in the ice crystal coffin, was suddenly wrapped by rolling demon aura. The host soul of Demon King Qian descended and borrowed Jiahani's body to enter the endless sea. A stream of demon light flashed up as the coffin stopped in front of the moon god Ouyang Lu Shuang. Qian indifferently looked at the moon god who was submerged in the moonlight and didn't say anything while his 10 fingers pressed down from the void. Heavenly demon binding net. Along with Qian's shout, his 10 fingers spread out infinitely. His 10 fingers were like 10 big nets, each of which seemed to be woven from demonic dragons' tendons and shining black lights that covered the sky. These nets, which were like 10 huge heaven nets shielding the moonlight, approached from all directions, enclosing Ouyang Lu Shuang. The moon was bright, but its brilliant lights were totally blocked by those 10 nets. On the divine craft demon god, when the two demon masters Cinda and Erig saw Qian display heavenly demon binding net, their faces instantly loosened, and they felt that this new moon god would soon be exterminated. The moonlight was like silver water, with Ouyang Lu Shuang as the center, diffused around, striking Qian's nets. Silver lights and demonic lights collided. Beautiful dazzling lights sparked in the dark. It was like fireworks were set off in the sky above the moon island as many colorful lights burst out. In the strange lights all over the sky, 10 of Qian's nets combined in an attempt to tie up the opponent tightly. After the 10 nets completely locked the sky, Qian concentrated his mind to have a careful look, and then his eyelids slightly shivered. The moon god Ouyang Lu Shuang had escaped from the space blockade and had left from the heavenly demon binding net. Master Qian, that woman, Cinda flew over from the divine craft demon god, stood behind Qian and couldn't help but ask. She's fled. Qian knitted his eyebrows, turned around throwing a glance at Cinda, and then said, from now on, in the endless sea, except for the 3 people including Yang Yi Tian, Chao Qiu Dao, and Yang Tian Emperor, there is another one who can be a threat to our great plan. Remember, if you see her next time, as long as you feel the situation is not good, you will have to escape immediately. Do not hesitate. Cinda looked aghast. The Corpse Soul Bridge has only 1 step left to be completed. You have to pull forth all of your effort to overcome the obstacles and search for Shiren's trail at the same time. Kill at first sight. Qian said. Master, is Shiren important? Cindo was puzzled and asked. He has relied on the external force to injure Ma Qiden. So, once that external force is gone, he will not have anything left and become an ordinary kid. Is he worthy of your attention? The boundless demon saber that Bosun has gotten from another space is one of the 3 great demon sabers from the remote antiquity, yet it has still been destroyed by that kid's sword. If he enters the god realm one day with that god's sword, no one in the endless sea can stop him. Qian coldly snorted and said. After a short pause, Qian continued, even I cannot. Cindo was startled, kneeled down on the ground, and said in fear, I understand. Chapter 349, Mentality Change. Chapter 349, Mentality Change. Shiren woke up worried. The quiet night hadn't completely disappeared yet. The first ray of the morning sunlight slowly sprinkled on his bare upper body. The daylight was like water bringing along a feeble flow of power that seeped into his body, moving toward his heart. Peacefully raising his head to look at the sunrise, Shiren felt quite calm and natural. The auras of the group of Chenduo and Dong Fanghe had been transformed into a strange, mysterious power. They then fused, with the profound chi of his body pouring into his 2 arms, helping the right arm complete the mutation, letting his left arm turn into red-purple hue and be heavier than 1,000 kilograms. A part of the strange power infiltrated into the martial spirit, making it even more mysterious, being able to absorb solar energy. Looking at the morning sunlight, Shiren remembered what had happened in the chasm battlefield. In the peculiar desert there, he had gotten the sun-refined spirit. Even the mysterious giant sword in the blood vein ring also came from there. The mutation that time had made his martial spirit was different from before. After having returned to the endless sea from the chasm battlefield, whenever the sun shined at noon, he felt that his body was absorbing its energy. However, that feeling hadn't been quite clear, which made him think that it might be just an illusion. Right now, he was not the same anymore. The sunlight shone on his upper body, bringing along the solar energy which penetrated his body and went into his heart, making him heat up. This feeling was real, not just an illusion. Just like that, he held his head up looking at the sky, quieted down his mind, and meditated. After a long while, he was certain that under the strange power, in addition to his ability to absorb the star power, he could also begin to absorb sun power. It was obvious that his ability to absorb the sun power was still far less than Tang Yuannan's. It couldn't even be compared with the majority of the 3 god sect's disciples. He understood that point well, but he still felt extremely magical and incredible. In the 3 god sect, no one had ever absorbed both the star power and the sun power in the 3 god sect. No one had ever heard of it. Shiren silently stood up and tried to swing his left arm, feeling a tremendous power hidden inside. His eyes brightened. The mutation had spread to his arms. As long as he continued killing, he believed that his whole body mutation would be completed very soon. At that time, every part of his body would be full of horrendous power, and he would be much stronger than he is now. The profound ancient tree in the swirl in his abdomen still continued to disappear. However, when he stood up, the swirl, which had been created by the fusion of the ice-cold flame, the Holy Spirit God, and the earth flame, began to spin again. A large amount of the sky and earth aura spread out from that swirl and was transformed into the new profound chi, pouring into the strange space. That strange space was the source of fundamental weapons. Shiren knew that the proliferation of the sky and earth aura was related to the Holy Spirit God. This strange living formation had the ability to gather the nearby sky and earth aura. It in itself could be considered the condensed pure energy body. With its existence, Shiren no longer had to worry about not being able to gather the sky and earth aura. The sun was getting sultry. Shiren stood in a daze for a while, indifferently glancing at the 2 beautiful bodies. After that, he started the star wings and flew up to the sky. Underneath Star Island, in a white stone chamber, laid a star ocean diagram. The sun god Tang Yuanan slightly bent down while talking to the moon god Ouyang Lu Shuang. The moonlight fully covered the entire body of the moon god. Fluttering mist brought other people a fantasy of the unreal creature like a fairy in a dream. She silently looked at each lifelike star in the star ocean diagram, listening to Tang Yuanan's narration without stating her own opinions. She seemed to be thinking of something. The star island had long been barren. There was no one on the island. Many formation techniques had mostly vanished. No one had been allowed to enter this place in the past. Even the 3 god sect's disciples didn't dare to step on the island. However, to demon dwellers, this constraint was invalid. The divine craft demon gods suspended in the sky above the Moon Island and Star Island. Plenty of demon dwellers riding demon beasts were flying around. Many of them had come to Star Island but found nothing, and thus, they had left the island. No one knew that under Star Island was a hidden star palace. It stayed hidden deep inside Star Island and was protected by 12 formation techniques, which could prevent souls from exploring and blockading. Even Demon King Qi Yan didn't know the existence of the hidden star palace, and thus, he couldn't know that the sun god and the moon god were right beside him. As the 3 god sect has survived and stood firm for thousands of years without collapse, they had become the strongest force in the endless sea, which meant their background was not ordinary. Temporarily, let the core disciples hide in the secret land on the seabed. Do not go out for a while. Keep contacts with the leaders of other forces in the endless sea, and discuss the plan to deal with the demon dwellers together. The moon god's voice was clear but cold. She turned her back toward Tang Yuannan and said, "As for Shiyan, just pay attention to his whereabouts and do not let him out of sight. Presently, all forces are searching for him to kill him. This is a danger but also an opportunity. If he can survive, he is then qualified to be crowned as the star god. If he dies, you have to inform me immediately. I will have to take his heart back to preserve the star martial spirit's heritage." Tang Yuannan's face became solemn. He slowly nodded. Just by borrowing a Sky Realm warrior's body, Qian has such a powerful strength. If he comes here on his own, not many people in the Endless Sea can defeat him. I have just entered the spirit realm, and I need more time to reinforce it. Don't disturb me during this time. The moon god continued. Tang Yuannan silently nodded and didn't say anything more. He bent down to conduct a ceremony as his figure gradually disappeared. On the seashore of the deserted island, 10 mummies were floating in the sea, including males, females, demon dwellers, and human beings. A fleet of 3 20-meter-long ships quietly docked on the shore. The ships were all empty. The heads of 2 strange demon beasts had been smashed with blood splashing everywhere. The air faintly smelled of blood that permeated the air. Blood was also spread all over the sea. A majestic figure with 2 wings on its back was drifting around in the air for a while and then dashed away. A long while later, in a small city under Dongfang family's command, a person appeared in the largest brothel named Drunk Dreams. He ordered 3 plump girls to serve him and solve the savage aura on his body. At night, he quietly left the brothel and reappeared in the sea that demon dwellers and warriors haunted. He would be merciless no matter which one it was. He would slaughter everyone he saw. Among these people, if there were beautiful women, he would take them away to the brothel to enjoy them. Time flew. Half a month had passed. In just half a month, the number of Endless Sea warriors and demon dwellers that had died in his hands was more than 100, including 7 or 8 Sky Realm warriors and more than 10 Nirvana Realm warriors. Warriors of the Endless Sea and demon dwellers that died in his hands would become mummies floating here and there, sometimes 1 or 2, sometimes more than 10. The quantity was different every time. As long as they saw those mummies, both the Endless Sea's forces and the cruel demon dwellers would all be terrified to the point that their bodies felt a chill. They subconsciously observed all directions to see if that person was in the vicinity or not. That person was ruthless and cold. His fame had spread out among the entire Endless Sea. Regardless of whether it was demon dwellers or warriors of the Endless Sea, they all considered him the most terrible opponent, like a lurking cunning beast in the dark. On the deserted island, in a dark stone cave, a naked person with dark red eyes and a ferocious face was gasping for breath. Meanwhile, a female demon dweller of Dragonhorn clan was bouncing on his body. In the Dragonhorn clan, males were ugly and ferocious, but females were very appealing and mesmerizing. Although they all belonged to the Dragonhorn clan, the appearance of males and females were totally different. If it weren't that all of them had horns on their heads, no one would think they were from the same tribe. Beside him, 2 hot females of the Dragonhorn clan were quietly lying on the ground, still displaying a look of satisfaction, but not breathing anymore. Half an hour later, he roared like a wild beast while his majestic body trembled. When his whole body vibrated, his upper body emitted red-purple light. Each of his sturdy muscles, which were as hard as steel, were full of tremendous power that mesmerized that female. However, right at this moment, the female of the Dragonhorn clan suddenly reacted. Her eyes were flooded with crazy hatred as her sharp nails quickly stabbed his neck. Bop, bop, bop. That female's fingernails all burst out. Her hand bones were also fragmented while her face was still overwhelmed with consternation. Her lower body struggled as her long limbs seemed to be about to explode. At the moment when the energy was spreading, she suddenly screamed in human language, "Go to hell, crazy brat." The male sitting on her revealed a ridiculing trace on his face. He then concentrated his power, forcefully pressing it into the female who was lying under him. The female's body was instantly frozen, turning into a sculpture as her amorous face remained. Suddenly, something bounced up from his heart. He immediately stood up, took a gown out of the storage ring which was bound around his waist, and then went out of the gloomy cave with his bare upper body. There was a noble, beautiful woman in her snow-white clothes outside the cave. Her eyes were as beautiful as the autumn water, which flashed up with profound mysteries. On her back was a pair of snow-white wings, which were around 5 or 6 meters long, quietly dangling just above the ground. Chapter 350, My Way. Chapter 350, My Way. Master, a beautiful woman was standing in front of the cave entrance with a complicated face. She called out gently. With her realm, she could immediately sense that there were 3 corpses in the cave just with one quick glance. She also knew what had happened to them. The male with his bare upper body was much stronger than an average person. His body was as hard as steel and was filled with power that could charm many beauties. "What are you here for?" Shurien's face darkened while his soul consciousness spread out, covering the deserted island. After having realized that it was only Uro, his face relaxed a little bit, but he was still vigilant and said, "Your wings race is now one of the Demon Dwellers' branches. When Demon Dwellers invaded the Snow Dragon Island, perhaps they didn't give you a hard time." Uro revealed a smile and nodded. "Demon Dwellers haven't troubled us indeed." "How did you find this place?" "It is not me who found it. It is the 3 people of Tienma's group. The Snow Dragon Island is not far away from here. Tienma's group and you have a soul connection. They have the ability to join souls. Therefore, within this short distance, as soon as you appeared here, they could already sense you." "Why are you here then?" "Master." "You still call me master. Our oath is not that cheap." Shurien was silent. His eyes glinted with a trace of irony. Sai, the matriarch of the White Wings clan, Uro, slightly released a sigh and sadly said, "After you left, something came up on the Snow Dragon Island. When demon dwellers occupied the island, we knew our true identity. It turns out that the 2 races have bonded with demon dwellers." Shurien frowned and quietly looked at her. "They are assimilated." Uro let out a sigh once again. "Many pagans have shown their loyalty toward demon dwellers after they knew their identity, especially when Demon King Bosun appeared and used demon aura covering the entire Snow Dragon Island. Through absorbing the demon aura, many of our pagans realized that their bodies could adapt well with the aura, which helped increase their power significantly. Bosun will probably enter the Endless Sea. It is his white bone's true body. However, even if Dishon and I unite, we are not a match. Bosun's mightiness has frightened our 2 tribes' pagans. After he revealed our identity and released demon aura penetrating the Snow Dragon Island, our pagans have benefited a lot from it, and thus, the situation on the island has quickly changed. Shurien's face slightly changed. Although Dishan and I are the patriarch and the matriarch of the Black Wings clan and the White Wings clan, we no longer have control of the situation. After realizing the transformation in their bodies, our pagans have considered themselves demon dwellers and started having hatred toward humanity. It has been challenging for us to restrain them. Yuro said reluctantly. Did you and Dishan gain any benefits from the demon aura? Shurien's face was sullen, silently sensing for a moment and suddenly sneered. How come I can feel that you're much stronger than before? Yuro nodded, forced a smile and said, that's right. Dishan and I couldn't resist the enchantment, and thus our strengths have substantially increased. By absorbing demon aura to refine our bodies, we have had a big harvest indeed. So, what did you come here for? Shurden said indifferently. I come here to tell you that you shouldn't return to the Snow Dragon Island. The White Bones truth body of Demon King Bosun was on the island. You are not his match. Once you appear, he will kill you immediately. Yuro advised Shurien with a heavy face, Master, your potential is limitless. I think that your achievements in the future will far surpass those of Chien and Bosun. However, before having that ability you should. We all know how their abilities are now. Shurien frowned but didn't say anything. Leave the endless sea. It is too chaotic here. Someone will find you sooner or later. Yuro looked at him and advised, the fact that we have followed to serve you before actually came from our sincerity. Even after the demon dwellers invaded the Snow Dragon Island, we still wanted to find a chance to take our people and leave there. Unfortunately, we have underestimated the power of Demon King Bosun. Currently, all tribes are assimilated. We have no other ways. After a short pause, Yuro continued, anyway, we cannot give up our people. Shurien was stunned and then nodded after a long while. His face regained the calmness while he said indifferently, you can go. I will remember your goodwill of coming here to inform me. From now on, you and the demon dwellers should get along well. Perhaps it is the best way for you. I understand it. Master, please leave Endless Sea. The Corpse Soul Bridge is almost complete. At that time when the three worlds can connect, the Endless Sea's warriors cannot withstand the demon dwellers' invasion. I will leave, but not now. Shurien contemplated a little bit and then beamed a faint smile. I haven't killed enough. Yuro was startled and bewilderedly looked at Shurien, feeling his malevolent intent. She then shifted her eyes to the three dead bodies in the cave and was stunned for a moment. After a long time, Yuro suddenly said, Master, your murderous intent is too strong. You seem to enjoy the killing. You have fallen in a possessed by the devil state. Shurien was still calm, shook his head, slightly laughed, and said, It is an evil way to you, but it is the way of my heart. Yuro was astonished. Her eyes were full of inexplicable suspicion. Her soft body gradually flew up, turned into a white, and disappeared into the horizon. 10 minutes later, Yuro stopped in the middle of a cluster of white clouds. Dishan was holding He Qingman in one hand and bowed his head looking at the deserted island below with a cold face. I have told him everything. Yuro released a sigh. According to his attitude when we were talking, he will not go to the Snow Dragon Island, but he will not leave the Endless Sea soon either. Dishan nodded. I knew that he would do so. Yuro was surprised. Dishan didn't explain anything, shifted his eyes toward He Qingman's gloomily beautiful eyes and said, He is there right on that deserted island. I can let you go now. You choose the destination for yourself. Let me down on that deserted island. He Qingman pondered for a while, and then her eyes suddenly became determined. Little girl, it has not been easy for us to protect your life, and you still want to go down there now? Yuro asked with doubt. Currently, either demon dwellers or Endless Sea warriors are hunting him down. Going with him is not different from finding death. He Qingman nodded. Dishan frowned and didn't say anything further. He brought He Qingman down to the island and then flew away with Yuro. He Qingman stood alone as her graceful body gently shivered. She then suddenly flew away like a burst of breeze. In front of the cave entrance, Shurien was indifferently looking ahead. Not long after that, He Qingman's prominent figure appeared. Shuryen slightly squinted, looking at the beautiful figure that was approaching him. His eyes brightened while he secretly complimented her in his thoughts. It was unknown when He Qingman had reached the Nirvana realm, but her sea of consciousness had formed, and the aura inside her body was vigorous. The wind sound resounded, howling nonstop around her, producing an impressive momentum. "What are you doing here?" Shuryen grunted and coldly sneered. "You are lucky to be able to survive on the Snow Dragon Island." "Why do you come here?" "I think you should know my current situation. I have survived because Dishan and Yuro have regard for you." He Qingman quickly dashed toward Shuryen and said with a gloomy face, "I obviously know your current situation. So why are you here then?" "I have nowhere else to go." Shuryen was silent. "Everyone is dead." He Qingman miserably shook her head and held her face, crying. "All the people of the He family died when demon dwellers invaded the Kiara Sea. My father, my brothers, and all of my relatives have all been killed. Our fellows have betrayed us. Our houses have been destroyed. In this huge endless sea, we have no place to stay. You tell me, what should I do now?" He Qingman was crying and slowly crouching down. Her shoulder slightly shivered as she looked lonely and helpless. "How is this related to me?" Shuryen looked indifferent without any trace of the slightest sympathy. He didn't agree with her nor comforted her. Linda and Xia Shengchuan had been killed right in front of him. The Yang family in the demon area probably have more bad things than good things. He didn't know if Yangmu's group was still alive in the chasm battlefield. It seemed that there was no good ending for people who were with him. Thus, his originally calm mind had a subtle change. When he had arrived in the Endless Sea, he had gained a lot but also lost a lot. Watching the people beside him die one by one, he felt regretful at heart. If he hadn't come to the Endless Sea, perhaps all these things would not have happened. After going through many things, he realized that if he wanted to survive in this world, he had to be stronger than others. Only overriding others would allow him to take control over his fate and not let his beloved ones be bullied. "I want to take revenge with you." Tears flooded in He Qingman's eyes, but she raised her head stubbornly, looking at him. Her beautiful eyes were full of hatred while she spoke up with a resolute face. "You are not qualified." Shuryen coldly shook his head, refusing. "Do you remember our bet on the Fire Cloud Island?" He Qingman's face was now covered with tears, but she still strongly said, "As I have told you, if you saved Xine Yanjia's sister, I would let you see my body. I will fulfill that promise now." As soon as she had finished her words, her clothes fell on the floor, and her perfect snow-white body was exposed under the sun. Chapter 351, Seeking Wealth from Danger. Chapter 351, Seeking Wealth from Danger. Under the sunlight, He Qingman's snow-white body emitted jade-like lights, proudly exposing itself in the air, dazzling others' eyes. Her big, white breasts were flawless. Fragrant grass spread all over her forbidden privates. This mesmerizing posture could make any man stunned and salivate. She was incredibly gorgeous, like a delicate, beautiful piece of art, making others not dare to destroy nor even touch her. She was standing naked in front of Shuryen. The appealing and heart-stirring curves of her body were revealed. However, her eyes were dull and miserable as if they were covered by invisible clouds. It meant that she wasn't in a good mood as she couldn't find the right direction to go. Shuryen was hypnotized as he looked at the perfect naked body in front of him. His eyes flashed up with a hot beam of lust. However, in just a moment, his eyes regained their alertness. He nodded and said, "Very beautiful. Take me with you to kill all the pagans of the short demon tribe, and then I will belong to you. They have exterminated the He family on the Fire Cloud Island." He Qingman let his presumptuous eyes stare at her naked body without a trace of embarrassment. Her eyes were as cold as ice while she spoke. Shuryen shook his head and said, "You should go and find Chao Chiodao or Yang Yitian. Only the true hegemony of the Endless Sea can meet your requirements. They are old men, and they have gone through all kinds of experiences in life. Although they are still alive, their minds have been as static as stagnant water. He Qingman forced a smile, but her heart was full of bitterness. Their pursuit was not the same with that of youth. My beautiful face cannot leak into their eyes. After having finished talking, He Qingman bowed down in front of him, crossing her arms so that her breasts slightly bounced, which was extremely mesmerizing. She looked at Shuryen and said, "If you promise me, I will let you touch me as long as you do not cross the limit. I will not mind." Her demeanor looked very charming. However, her eyes didn't display any trace of love, but instead, it was still cold and relentless. Shuryen released a sigh within his heart and quietly shook his head. The storage ring on his finger flashed up, and a set of rough linen clothes suddenly flew out. He Qingman was surprised as he put the clothes on her and immediately launched the star wings, flying away. Leave the endless sea. The Grace mainland is no longer just a gathering place for warriors. Your heart is dead here. You need to leave so that your heart can rebloom its vitality. Shuryen's voice came up from the sky. The tone was full of emotion, as if it was not only to advise her, but also to persuade himself. He Qingman's beautiful eyes were overwhelmed with surprise as she looked at Shuryen, who had turned into a bunch of lights drifting away. An indescribable feeling churned up in her heart. Being stunned for a while, He Qingman knitted her eyebrows and took off the linen clothes. She then put a set of silk clothes on her mesmerizing body. As soon as she was about to throw the linen clothes, she suddenly thought of something. Her face blushed because of embarrassment. She didn't throw the clothes away, but retrieved them to put in the storage ring while beaming a faint smile. Going into the cave, looking at the 3 naked female corpses of the Dragon Horn clan's pagans, and seeing the trace of teeth on their bodies, she obviously understood what had happened. He Qingman was a little startled when she saw the satisfaction on their faces. She had heard about the sexual drives of demon females. People had also said that it was very rare to find males who could satisfy their needs. People had even said that they needed 5 males taking turns in the battle to be able to satisfy a demon female, making them sublimate. Looking at the 3 girls, He Qingman was secretly scared. Cold Wind Island. This was an island which was shrouded by dark clouds and heavy Yin aura all year round. That was the territory of the Gu family. Momentarily, it was the temporary residence of the corpse's god sect. On the flank of a tranquil mountain, there were many human-made caves. The corpse's god sect disciples took shelter in those caves. In a cave, the elder of the corpse's god sect, Yinhai, was sitting on a Yin wooden coffin with his eyes closed, gathering Yin aura and pouring the Yin power of profound qi into the 2 coffins. Yinhai suddenly opened his eyes as his face became odd. Shriek, shriek, shriek. The sound of nails scratching on wood resounded from the 2 coffins. 2 sky corpses didn't want to be under Yinhai's control, but wanted to get out of the coffins. Yinhai was startled, immediately took out a Yin stone to pass out the news of this abnormality. Not long after that, another 3 figures flew over Yinhai's cave from another cave. The hierarchy of the corpse's god sect, Qingming, wore a green mask and asked with a cold voice, "Yinhai, is it true?" Yinhai bent down to conduct the ceremony and then pointed to the 2 coffins without saying anything. Strange sounds came out from the 2 coffins, giving people a hair-raising feeling. However, the 3 people who had just arrived were not scared. They even displayed joy on their faces. "That little rascal is nearby." Qingming snorted and slightly grinned. It seems that he couldn't wait anymore. He will take action this time for sure. Maybe his target is here. The Queen of Sky and the King of Earth of the Yin-Yang Wonderland harumphed and nodded together while their eyes were as cold as ice. "We have spent a lot of effort to catch this little rascal, but it has been unable to find him. Now, thanks to these 2 sky corpses, we have found out his whereabouts." The Queen of Sky licked her pink lips and said, "In just a short time, more than 30 disciples of Yin-Yang Wonderland have died in his hands. Even my 2 most favorite female disciples have been tortured to death. He has indeed considered the endless sea a piece of meat for him to mutilate and release his anger. I, of course, want to kill him this time. He will die this time guaranteed." The King of Earth coldly snorted, "Even if he has comparable power to Ma Qidun's, we can still destroy him with the 3 of us united. Don't worry. The King Corpse is still under the ground, and we're well prepared this time." As long as he dares to enter this cold-wind island, he has no way back. Qingming said with a grin and said, I want to absorb all of the forces in his body until he leaves this world and dies. The Queen of Sky clenched her teeth and then laughed out loud as if she was an excited, bloodthirsty animal. Inhai, you stay here and don't make any move that makes him suspicious. The three of us will be concealing ourselves close by. Qingming contemplated a little bit before giving his commands. I understand. The three God Realm warriors quickly discussed together and then flew out to find a place to hide, secretly waiting. Inhai continued observing the coffins, reaching out to touch them, and said with a low voice, It's time to pay. In a sea near the Fire Cloud Island, the formerly calm sea suddenly churned. On the seabed, a person was swimming like a fish toward Fire Cloud Island. He raised his head up looking at the sky and used his soul consciousness to check his surroundings. Two strange surging flows of energy came up from the fire cloud wind, which seemed to be calling him to come over. After meditating for a while, he used his fastest speed to reach to the edge of the Fire Wing Island, but didn't rush to get on the island right away. Instead, he stopped and observed everything around him for a moment. After a while, he quietly got on the shore, looked at the black clouds on the sky, and then slowly closed his eyes, sensing the volatility of the sky and earth aura to see if there were any abnormalities. He realized the existence of the two sky corpses, which meant that Inhai, the elder of the corpses god sect, was also on the island. In the past, if he had known that there were sky realm warriors there, he would not have dared to take risks to enter the place. However, as the Holy Spirit God, the ice, cold flame, and the earth flame were currently in the fusion state, he would not be scared but be even more excited. His martial spirit was in the mutation process, which had been covering his arms and his upper body. After killing some more Sky Realm warriors and then using their pure tremendous aura to break through, he was certain that he could complete the mutation of his lower body. Therefore, Sky Realm warriors were indispensable supplements for him. Recently, as his upper body had completed the mutation, it seemed that he couldn't bear the strength of his body anymore. When every part of his body was mutated, he felt that the heaviness was like a mountain. The bones of his lower body seemed to be out of his bearing. Every time he moved, his legs produced abnormal sounds. He had to complete the mutation quickly. Otherwise, his body would become weirder. This imperfect form would affect his strength in a battle. After days and nights passed by, the forces that had been created by the fusion of the Holy Spirit God, the ice-cold flame, and the earth flame would slowly be gone. This was something that he couldn't stop. He guessed that it would not be long until the integration of these three living forms would be finished. At that time, he would be back to his normal state, not having the ability to kill Sky Realm warriors anymore. Right now, the Endless Sea situation was extremely chaotic. If he lost the power that was comparable with a Sky Realm warrior, his life in the Endless Sea would be miserable, and perhaps he would be pursued and killed. Time was not waiting for him anymore. Looking at the gloomy sky, he clearly knew that the island might be dangerous, but he was determined and ready to take a chance with fate. Seeking wealth from danger. His ruthlessness surged inside his heart. He no longer hesitated, immediately activating the star wings and displaying the starlight, teleporting him near the mountain. You are finally here. When he appeared, Qingming's cold, fake laughter suddenly came up from the underground. A silhouette leaped up and appeared in front of Shurian. At the same time, the earth thundered, and a hairy ape-like monster appeared. Chapter 352, Using Malicious Tricks to Hurt a Woman. Chapter 352, Using Malicious Tricks to Hurt a Woman. The King Corpse. This hairy monster was around 3 meters tall and was the fundamental foundation of the corpses god sect and the King Corpse. King Corpses were the highest-level corpse slave. They had the innate ability to use the power of the 5 elements as well as an iron body which was immune to most swords, sabers, and other secret attacking techniques. Each King Corpse had spent tens of thousands of years underground refining the corpse technique and absorbing plenty of corpse aura. Thus, they were one of the most terrible creatures in the world. As soon as the king corpse appeared, the cold corpse aura, which was as dense as thick litter, spewed out from the underground and gathered by the king corpse. The Cold Wind Island had another name called Burying Island, which was the ancient burial place of the Gu family. All Gu family's dead warriors were buried in Funeral Island, and thus, numerous warriors' corpses had been buried in this place. With the typical circumstances that the sunlight didn't reach this place, the corpse aura always stayed hidden in the ground instead of dispersing. Qingming had chosen the Cold Wind Island to be his temporary shelter as he had seen this island's special feature. The king corpse had sneaked into the ground, absorbing the corpse aura here and quietly cultivating. Just after a few days, it had already had significant improvement. Standing in front of Qingming, the kind corpse showed a very sharp and long fang jutting out from the king corpse's mouth, while its fingers were like 10 sharpened swords of 1 meter, long nails. A plump corpse aura was like a long earthworm that flew out from those nails and moved constantly, which was inexplicably strange. The king corpse had white-gray eyes, looked at Shuryen in a daze as it seemed to be waiting for Qingming's order. 2 palace masters of Yin-Yang Wonderland also quietly appeared, one in front, one behind, surrounding Shuryen. The Queen of Sky Fan Xiangyun was wearing purple clothes. Her pants tightly attached to her legs and only covered to just above her knees, exposing her 2 white, jade-like feet. The tight pants revealed her fully round butts and her slim waist. Her firm big breasts were protruding as if they wanted to split out of her clothes, which gave people a fulfilling feeling. With her full red lips, her beautiful watery eyes, and her appealing body, she was laughing out loud, looking at Shuryen, who was like a nasty woman indulging in her erotic dreams. The King of Earth was standing behind Shuryen, but he didn't say anything. He suddenly sat down, flapping a white fan in his hand, sometimes spreading the fan and sometimes folding it. The fan had a painting of 100 birds surrounding the phoenix on it. He looked like an old scholar with a profound study. Qingming still wore the green mask with yellow fangs. While his body stayed hidden in a loose black tunic, his green eyes were like poisonous snakes that were looking for opportunities to bite other people. Some warriors of the corpse's god sect and the Yin-Yang Wonderland quietly came out, besieging Shuryen and coldly watching him. Yinhai was one of them. He was holding a silver morning stick. His face was white, gray like death, while his mouth revealed a cruel smile. It seemed that he wanted to see how Shuryen would die. There were a total of 3 God Realm warriors and more than 10 Nirvana Realm and Sky Realm warriors. As Shuryen saw everyone surrounding him, he shuddered while his face became dull and darkened. It was a trap that was reserved for him. He had somehow understood after seeing Qingming's appearance. When the King Corpse, the Queen of Sky, and the King of Earth appeared, his heart felt like it was sinking to the bottom of a glass. He knew that it would be pretty hard to leave this place in one piece. Little brother, as you have killed many men. Of our 2 forces, you seem to be in good shape. Fan Xiangyun smiled indifferently as her soft body swayed with the wind while her breasts were heaving like an earthquake and her eyes were glistening. Invisible mesmerizing consciousness spread out, which was like a magnetic field covering the entire area. The corpse's god sex followers and male Yin-Yang Wonderland's disciples surrounding her were like inadequate sexual people being granted stimulating drugs. Their faces and ears were all red, their eyes ignited with a flame of lust, staring at her without a blink, feeling regretful that they couldn't storm forward and give her prominent breasts a bite. Even the King of Earth was also affected. A flame of lust burned up in his eyes while he gasped for breath. Shuryen's eyes became dazed. Standing in front of Fan Xiangyun, he suddenly felt the scene around was changing. The surrounding mountains turned into a gorgeous palace, and the ground under his feet became a luxurious carpet. The young heart-stirring woman suddenly appeared beside him. She started opening up the buttons of her clothes. Her belt fell on the ground. Her breath was as fragrant as orchids while her full red lips slightly shivered. Her round breasts protruded, and her eyes were full of deep affection as she wrapped him up tightly. This fascinating scene could stir everyone's lust. It could turn a person into a wild beast as the evil mind churned and swallowed all of his wisdom. Fan Shangyun smiled tenderly. Her body swayed while she was performing the sacred martial technique of the yin-yang wonderland, ecstasy's dreamland to its extreme. Her laughter and mesmerizing eyes brought Shuryen into a dream from which he would never wake up. For those who were nearby, as long as they were men, all of them would be affected. Regardless of whether they were the corpse's god-sex followers who made friends with corpses or male disciples of yin-yang wonderland, even if they were in the sky realm, they would be mesmerized, not knowing who they were, just blankly staring at Fan Shangyun. Even the King of Earth was slightly affected as his mental state was one level lower than Fan Shangyun. No wonder he always had to ask for her opinion on important decisions in yin-yang wonderland. Qingming was the only person who wasn't being affected. Qingming. His green eyes were still ruthless without any abnormal change. Queen of Sky, don't tell me that you like him? Qingming looked at her for a while and then spoke up with a hoarse voice, don't waste everyone's time. I will now command the King Corpse to exterminate him so that we can avoid unexpected things. Don't. Fan Shangyun revealed a faint smile as she excitedly winked at Shuryen, covered her mouth and said, as I have said, I want to drain off this little rascal's yang qi until he is dead. Right now, he is in a dream without any sense of autonomy. No matter how I move or touch him, he will not resist and will only obey me. After having finished talking, she laughed out loud, walked over to Shuryen, and started taking off his belt. A trace of disgust flashed across Qingming's eyes. He coldly snorted and said, this little kid is only in the Nirvana realm, so how much benefit will you get even if you can take all of his yang qi? He cut off one of Ma Qidun's arms. There isn't merely just the power of the Nirvana realm in his body. Fan Shangyun slightly chuckled. Her beautiful eyes became cold, displeasingly glancing at Qingming. If I can completely absorb the qi of this kind of warrior, I will certainly reap great benefits. Qingming, you have to accept this. Don't you want me to live happily? All right, his body is yours, but his other things belong to me. The hierarchy of the corpse's god sect frowned and said, as for the passion of secret treasures, we will talk about it later. Fan Shangyun revealed a broad smile, but her eyes were even colder than earlier. You can take the heaven flame, but don't dream about that god sword. After saying those words, Fan Shangyun moved to the side of Shuryen, kissed him on his cheek, and then pushed him down on the ground. A dark red circle of light suddenly spread out from her storage ring, covering her and Shuryen. It prevented other people from seeing the activities inside. The dream was really magical. No one in this fantasy could differentiate between good and bad. They could just let go of all trauma and show their lingering primitive affections. In this circle of light, Fan Shangyun laughed out loud, looking at Shuryen. She quietly observed the transformation in his eyes as she gently took off his clothes. When his towering privates were exposed, Fan Shangyun's smile was even more brilliant. Slowly taking off her clothes, Fan Shangyun revealed a smile, swayed, and lowered her round butt. Ah! Fan Shangyun suddenly screamed out loud, her charming face full of panic. She quickly wanted to stand up. The coldness spread out all over her entire body from her lower body, freezing her internal systems. The mysterious chill burst out to every corner and every bone in her body. Shuryen's dazed eyes abruptly glinted with a feeling of emotionless and ruthlessness. Without hesitation, he raised his hands, seizing her prominent white breasts as his handprints launched at the same time. Her breasts were deformed and then burst out. Boom! Fan Shangyun's naked body pierced through the circle of light, flying straight out. Her straight legs had been frozen, and her lower body had become ice crystal. Her appealing breasts had bloodily burst open. There was no trace of charm in her beautiful eyes, only fear remained. Crazily screaming, she covered her breasts as if she wanted to stop them from exploding. However, blood kept flowing out through the slits between her fingers. Trickles of blood dripped on her white body and then ran down her abdomen and instantly formed into ice, which was very peculiar. In the circle of light, Shuryen displayed a cold face, grinned, and put all of his strength in storming straight to Fan Shangyun, who was still floating in the sky. He wanted to carry on his annihilation. Chapter 353. An Ambush in Adversity. Chapter 353. An Ambush in Adversity. Two great god realm warriors, Qingming and the King of Earth, who were still waiting for Fan Shangyun to absorb all of Shurian's power, suddenly heard her miserable screams. Instantly, they saw her body fly straight up to the sky while blood splashed everywhere. After that, they saw Shurian grinning like a mighty, bloodthirsty beast and then pierce through the sky like a sharp, pointed sword. He was very ferocious, looking like he had to exterminate Fan Shangyun at all costs. "Do you want to die?" The King of Earth shouted ear-piercingly. The white fan in his hand suddenly flew out. The painting of 100 birds surrounding a phoenix seemed to be revived. Different kinds of colorful birds leaped out of the fan, singing out loud all together and crazily speeding to attack Shurian. These birds were not big, but their feathers were beautiful and their flying speed was as fast as lightning. In just a blink, they had already scratched the void, striking Shurian. Numerous attacking waves like frost, flame, venom, sharp drift abruptly sprayed out from those birds' mouths. Although it was individually not a strong attack, they intertwined together like a spider net, and that was where the extremely powerful attraction force came from. Horrendous power inside Shurian's body from the three fierce, living forms flowed out, while the second sky of rampage and negative forces all churned up in his body. At this moment, he burst out his full power to attack. He was determined to kill or seriously injure that partly frozen body at all cost. The life seal was on one of his hands, while the death seal was on the other hand. Two seals integrated into one, creating the life and death seal that contained vigorous attacking power. However, he suddenly realized that a sky-piercing sucking force was starting up. The power was interwoven together like a quagmire that could entangle all kinds of creatures without the slightest struggle. Blood streamed down the chest of the Queen of Sky Fan Shangyun. Her breasts had burst open where her sticky flesh and tendons there could now be seen. Her face was dreary, and half of her body was frozen. She was condensing her forces to thaw the frozen part of her body. Shurian rushed toward her from below. Even though he was very close to her, he suddenly stopped and began to sink slowly. The craziness appeared in Fan Xiangyun's beautiful eyes. Her full red lips let out an earth-shaking scream. Her hands on her chest clustered and formed into two light balls. One was purple one, and one was green one, both emitting a vast light. Fan Shangyun had refined the god soul to create two small figures inside the two light balls. Those small people had the same appearance as her, but their temperament was completely different. It seemed that the person inside the green light ball had an upright and dignified appearance. The two hands came together, forming a cross as if one was worshipping some illusory god. The figure in the purple light ball had no clothes, always wore a lustful smile, and continually performed provocative dances. Radiant beams from the two light balls burst out. The two people in the balls gradually grew. Their eyes were simultaneously looking toward Shurian. Suddenly, the eyes of the two people inside the light balls changed. They exchanged looks before flying out of the light balls like the illusion of ghosts. Their bodies were like smoke, floating out and drifting toward Shurian. Among those two people, one was arrogant righteousness, and the other was lustful evil, which instantly dashed into Shurian's eyes. Shurian's head began violently convulsing. He felt like his body was split into two illusions, each of which had its own consciousness. One was upright, and the other one was ruthless. Even Shurian's soul seemed to be divided into two and constantly fighting with each other. Everything happened in a split second. As soon as he felt something wrong, he fell onto the quagmire, which had been created by the flock of birds earlier. All kinds of exotic power instantly penetrated his body. The flock of birds continued to glow, their pointy beaks continually pecked at Shurian. Shurian's thigh appeared with several holes of blood. His body couldn't bear the pecks of those birds' pointy beaks. Blood and flesh mixed and bones could be seen. However, a sharp sound resounded when the birds pecked at his upper body and his two arms. Those parts of his body were not affected at all. The King of Earth was motionlessly sitting on the ground, revealing a cold smile while watching the flock of birds peck at Shurian. Qingming had originally been about to take action, however, when he saw Shuryan being constrained by the soul division technique of Fan Shangyun and the King of Earth, he wasn't in a hurry to assist. He just observed crazy Fan Shangyun. Fan Shangyun's body was suspended in the air. Her blood had been frozen into blood crystals. There was no trace of charm left on her face, leaving only cruelty and bitterness. When she waved her hands, the two light balls suddenly burst out and turned into numerous dots of light, flowing into the frozen places on her body and dissolving the ice energy. The illusory Tuk Katmong Ken was broken by her miserable, crazy scream. The surrounding disciples of the two sects woke up from the illusion. Everyone surprisingly looked at her and then at Shuryan's blood-dripping body. These people didn't know what had happened. However, when they saw Fan Shangyun's heart-stirring body miserably dilapidated without any trace of beauty left, they were terrified and shifted their eyes toward Shuryan with a look of fear on their faces. Don't kill him right now. I want him to bear the extreme humankind tortures. I want to detain his soul and torture it to death. Fan Shangyun clamored crazily. Her two pupils shot out the perniciousness, preventing the King of Earth from taking action. Anyone who looked at her in the eyes at this moment would be in a panic. Even the face of the King of Earth was discolored, and he didn't dare to go against her request. The blue and purple dots of light flowed into Fan Shangyun, making her tremble and the cold air from the ice swirl. She used her power to force the icy power of the ice-cold flame out. God Realm warriors were God Realm warriors after all. Although she had been neglectfully injured, once she reacted, even the power of the ice-cold flame couldn't do anything. Fan Shangyun, with her disheveled hair and bloody breasts, was like a banshee showing her fangs and claws as she stormed toward Shuryan. At this moment, she was no longer the Queen of Sky who could mesmerize tens of thousands of men. She was now a woman who became crazy because of the humiliation she received. A sign of horror flashed across Shuryan's eyes. Two strands of consciousness of the two people who had been created by Fan Shangyun appeared in Shuryan's sea of consciousness and continuously attacked his host's soul. His sea of consciousness churned. Under the influence of those two phantoms, the 5 devils in the sea of consciousness crazily came out. However, they didn't stop those two phantoms, but stared at Shuryan's host's soul instead. All of a sudden, the glabella of his host's soul, the place between his eyebrows, suddenly jerked as a white eye was cracking his flesh and skin and slowly emerged. In that eye, a group of flames was jumping peculiarly. A flow of air that could kill all creatures and souls came up sharply. At the same time, a bunch of bright silver lights instantly rushed to Fan Shangyun's 2 strands of consciousness and covered them. Silently, those 2 phantom souls perished and scattered, leaving no sound or trace. Shuryan's formerly surging sea of consciousness regained its normal state. Shuryan awakened. The feeling of being divided in 2 had disappeared. His eyes also restored their consciousness. Right at this moment, Fan Shangyun, with her disheveled hair, who was showing fangs and claws, abruptly waved her 10 fingertips. A bunch of blue-purple light bloomed, dashing toward Shuryan's neck from a close distance. Shuryan shuddered. Even before he could react, the Star Marshal's spirit activated the starlight. A beam of light flashed while his body was instantly shot 1 mile away and reappeared in front of Inhai's cave. Confine. The ability of the star, profound chi, in power, negative powers, and the swirl that gathered the power of the ice-cold flame, the earth flame, and the Holy Spirit God simultaneously flowed out altogether, forming a gravitational field, which was like an invisible prison confining Inhai. Inhai's face changed. When he was about to take action with his full power, he suddenly felt his body being controlled. Some unknown force had detained him. His strength became turbid, and there was no way to calm it down. Without the strength to protect himself, Inhai's body was cut into pieces by the gravitational field. Each piece of flesh, one by one, quickly detached from his body. The gravitational field was a typical secret technique. The more types of power poured in, the greater power it had. Right now, there were 7 kinds of power inside Shuryan's body. When they blended, Even a Sky Realm warrior like Inhai wasn't able to bear them, and his body's strength was totally restrained. Shuryen knew that if it continued like this, the gravitational field would cut off Inhai's body until he was dead. He couldn't wait any longer. Shuryen threw himself into the gravitational field and launched a blow striking Inhai's head. After that, he flew in the cave where the two wooden coffins were placed. His two hands had soon condensed the life seals. 7 life seals flew out, merged into one, and then divided into 2 flows falling into the 2 respective coffins. Ao wailing. The 2 sky corpses, which were confined inside the wooden coffins by a secret technique, suddenly held up. The wooden coffins were broken. The 2 sky corpses got out and appeared in front of Shuryen. Shuryen was overjoyed. In adversity, he burst into laughter, not able to hide his cheerfulness. Chapter 354, Frenzy. Chapter 354, Frenzy. That year, at burial plot number 93, Shuryen printed the life seal on these 2 sky corpses, causing them to mutate. It was like opening their spiritual consciousness, which created a miraculous contact between him and the 2 corpses. After that, he had to think for a long time to understand the magical effect of the life seal as well as the reason why he could have such relationships with the 2 sky corpses. The reason was due to the life seal. Seeing these 2 sky corpses again after many years, he used the life seal once again. However, this time was much different from before because now the life seal had been fused from the power of the 3 great living forms and his profound chi, making the connection between him and the 2 sky corpses stronger. The 2 sky corpses were standing in front of him. Their bleary eyes gradually displayed intimacy, looking at him with astonishment like they were waiting for something. The feeling was fantastic. As Shuryen had a feeling that he could freely command these 2 sky corpses, he tried to release a flow of spiritual consciousness and stretched his hand, pointing to the herd of Yin-Yang Wonderland's disciples who were standing opposite him. Expectedly, the 2 sky corpses were like 2 ferocious beasts immediately flying up, rushing straight to the Yin-Yang Wonderland's disciples. The dead aura massively rolled out with amazing momentum. Shuryen was overjoyed. When he flew into the gravitational field, the strangling force of this field pulled him into a quiet place where Inhai's body was still floating around. He then absorbed Inhai's aura entirely, but because of the gravitational field's existence, Inhai's body remained floating around behind him. Although the gravitational field existed, it was invisible to the naked eye. Thus, in the eyes of Yin-Yang Wonderland's disciples, Inhai's floating body looked extremely strange, giving those who were watching it a bone-chilling feeling. Still staying in the gravitational field, Shuryen flew to the opposite mountain. He took advantage of the swirl in his body once again. As he could feel the surging power pouring into his body, he calmed his mind and passed his consciousness into the blood vein ring. Come out! The strength of Shuryen's body burst out with monstrous momentum. He suddenly roared. He wanted to use the insight he had gathered during that time to summon the mysterious giant sword. To do that, he needed to have enough powerful forces. Sure indeed. When his strength had reached a certain level, and his body tendons began to feel pain, the mysterious giant sword finally flew out of the blood vein ring. With one hand clutching the sword, a violent sucking force instantly absorbed the power of his body as strange eyes opened on the sword. Whenever there was an eye opened, more evil aura was added to the sword. It was like an ancient troll who had been dormant for 1 billion years climbing out of that crazily sucking gravitational field. While Shuryen was holding the mysterious giant sword, his host's soul trembled, and his sea of consciousness was as bright as a mirror, irradiating even the smallest commotions of the energy fluctuations around his body. Each ray of soul consciousness inside the sea of consciousness was like a mirror. Without releasing the soul consciousness, he could still feel the energy fluctuations of the warriors standing around him. The moving trajectory of the energy inside the surrounding warriors became very clear. No matter what kind of martial technique it was, as long as they released their forces, he could recognize them immediately. Shuryen's eyes were as bright as a shooting star, splendid and lively. In his eyes, the world now was different from before. The gossamer of the sky and earth corpse aura from underneath the surrounding mountains, including the aura of vegetation and a variety of energy in the world, seemed to be revived. Even naked eyes could see it. It was marvelous. Holding the giant sword and seeing through the sword's opened eyes, he could view the true nature of things, which was like the moonlight exposing itself again after the fog had dissipated. At the same time, a stream of evil aura, along with the sword, infiltrated his sea of consciousness and fused with his host's soul. A desire to destroy all creatures arose from deep inside his consciousness. It was uncontrollable and irremovable. If all the people here were not dead, Shurien would never be able to stop this desire. His red eyes were full of bloodthirsty craziness. Under the urge of the evil desire, Shurien couldn't help but hold his face up, roaring like a demon from hell who liked to show off its ruthlessness. Qingming's face suddenly changed. Fan Xiangyun was stunned. She then hastily cast all kinds of spiritual illusions to agitate Shurien's mind, pushing him into a fantasy. However, hallucinating secret technique of Yin-Yang Wonderland instantly lost their effects as soon as they met Shurien's eyes. His eyes smashed down any kind of fantasy. Fan Xiangyun was aghast. She was born with the soul martial spirit, which not only helped her easily grasp all sorts of charm martial techniques of Yin-Yang Wonderland, but also enhanced her power several times. Over many years, the combination of the strange mind martial spirit and the enchanting secret technique of Yin-Yang Wonderland had affected numerous warriors, who then had to kneel down in front of her. Nevertheless, a Nirvana realm warrior like Shurien had unexpectedly broken her enchantment. When he held the mysterious giant sword in his hand, his soul seemed to be thoroughly immune and was no longer affected by the attacks of others. This major change frightened Fan Xiangyun very much. Her innate martial spirit had lost its efficacy. It was no different from a blow that seriously injured her, so it took all of her courage to rush forward and start a fight with Shurien. The King of Earth was aghast as he quickly stood up. When the hand holding the white fan flipped, a whirlwind instantly appeared, birds flew around, and a splendid golden sword emerged in his palm. The 100-meter-long golden sword's light burst out and turned into a long dragon king. Many birds flew out from there, penetrating the dragon king's body. The energy of those birds gathered all in one place. The dragon king twisted and turned, with scales on its body discharging many colorful lights. The dragon king flew toward Shurien with an imposing, arrogant appearance. At the same time, Qingming screamed out, giving a command to the king corpse. The 3-meter-tall king corpse held its face up, releasing earth-shaking roars. Even the originally dead mountains trembled from its roars. Among the howls, the king corpse leaped up while his mouth spurted out groups of 5 elements twilight. 5 huge light columns condensed in the void, turning into the 5 elements twilight which could bind all creatures. This 5 elements twilight started to wrap around Shurien's legs. As soon as the Dragon King and the 5 elements twilight appeared, the deserted island instantly had a big change. Dark clouds, which had existed there all the time, were pressed down, making it look like the sky was about to collapse. Shurien held the giant sword in his hand, raised his head up to glance at dark clouds above his head, and realized there were countless insects' corpses, which often appeared on dead bodies, which were wiggling and absorbing the corpse aura rising from underneath. Those insects' corpses were controlled by the king corpse, tearing and swallowing each other to become even bigger. Each new insect's corpse had a volume 10 times bigger than before, and their power also skyrocketed. Millions of insects' corpses wriggled, devoured each other, and then formed into tens of thousands of fat insects' corpses like snow-white maggots. There was still sticky snow-white liquid on their bodies, which looked extremely nauseating. Staying inside the gravitational field, Shurien stood still, sensing all kinds of energy which were bursting out and impetuously pouring into the giant sword. When 1/3 of the eyes on the sword had opened, it stopped absorbing the power from his body. Right at this time, Shurien swung the sword, slashing that 100-meter-long Dragon King's head. Crack, crack, crack. When the giant sword was swung up, the void began to break apart. It was like an extremely evil eye that brought along exotic, wicked forces that were infiltrating the sword. The mysterious secret giant sword suddenly emitted bloody red light, turning the sky above the deserted island into a sea of blood. 1/3 of the number of the opened eyes had also turned a pink hue. With the giant sword as the center, a flow of evil, destructive aura turned into a bunch of sticky blood light splashing and spreading out all directions. That flow of blood light was as if it had its own life, flying to the exact caves that have the disciples of the corpse's god sect and the yin-yang wonderland inside. When the blood light entered the body, the disciples of the two sects screamed out miserably as their bodies quickly dissolved and turned into a puddle of blood. Nirvana realm warriors could resist for a short while but had to bear the extreme pain. They helplessly looked at the blood light that was gradually eroding their bodies and then turned them into a puddle of blood in the end. Sky realm warriors had faster reactions than the others. As soon as they saw the blood light coming, they hurriedly turned around and ran away, escaping from the fatal blow. If a warrior got hit by the blood light, he would definitely become a puddle of blood sooner or later. Their aura didn't dissolve, but was absorbed by Shurien's mystery martial spirit. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Shurien suddenly held his face up to the sky and laughed out loud. His laughter was extremely wild and fierce. He felt the spiritual aura infiltrating his body. He slightly swung the mysterious giant sword as a flow of sharp blood light shot out and instantly slashed the Dragon King into half. Dozens of birds flew out from the Dragon King, but the evil forces of the blood light spread and quickly cut them into pieces. Thus, the strand of God consciousness from the King of Earth was erased. The birds finally disappeared like a puff of smoke. Shurien swung his sword once again. The brutal sword pierced through the sky as if it wanted to cut a deep, bottomless abyss. The insect's corpse hiding in the dark clouds were swallowed by the abyss in the sky even before they could use their forces. They then permanently disappeared into that chaotic space. This is my power. I'm so comfortable and so happy. Crazily laughing out loud, Shurien was holding the mysterious sword in his hand, slightly swaying his head with satisfaction. He was getting crazier and crazier. The three god realm Qinming, the King of Earth, and the Queen of Sky were bewilderedly watching Shurien while they had a bone-chilling feeling in their hearts. Chapter 355, I Give You Freedom. Chapter 355, I Give You Freedom. Above the deserted island, Shurien was crazily laughing. The mysterious god sword in his hand swung up and the sharp blood light quickly hacked down on the opposite mountain. The blood light minced the mountain as if it smashed a piece of tofu, splitting it into two halves. The mountain collapsed shortly after. Holding the mysterious giant sword in his hand, Shurien felt a wonderful pleasure as if he was grasping the whole world. His forces spread out, and the scene appeared clearly in his soul consciousness. He couldn't suppress the desire of destroying all creatures, regretting not being able to kill everything with just one slash. It was an indescribable joy. From a distance, two Sky Realm warriors had been lucky enough not to be killed under Shurien's sword. They were wearing panicked looks on their faces and didn't have the courage to take actions anymore, not daring to come closer as they felt extremely insecure. In these Sky Realm warriors' eyes, Shurien now was like an undefeatable demon god. Only avoiding him could save their lives. Even the three god realm warriors Qingming, the King of Earth, and the Queen of Sky felt frightened, silently watching Shurien laughing out loud, not knowing what they should do. Only the 10,000-year king corpse of the corpse's god sect was not scared of Shurien's impetuous momentum, quickly rushing toward him. In the dazzling 5 elements halo, condensed by the 5 elements forces of the world with blazing light and surging power, the king corpse instantly appeared in front of Shurien. Ha ha! Shurien grinned while raising the mysterious giant sword. The thick blood light spread out in all directions, which was not different from the fresh blood that flowed out from the sword. The eyes on the sword were glowing scarlet, shooting out ferocious looks while the pupils were rolling as if they were waiting for him to launch an attack. The sword aura tore the sky apart, creating a big hole. Numerous strange lights shot out from that hole like shooting stars, zoomed straight for the corpse insects, drew them in, and then they soon disappeared into the huge space hole, no longer existing in this world. Ah, wailing. The king corpse raised its head up, roaring. Following the roar, the five elements' force massively gathered, then fused with layers upon layers of dead aura and poured into the five elements' halo. After having received more power, the five elements' halo, which looked like a huge multicolored cloud, became vigorous and suddenly stormed toward Shuryen. The king corpse turned around, passed into the five elements' halo, and then strangely disappeared. Shuryen sneered. His face was as cold as ice. When the sword swung up, evil blood lights burst out from the eyes on the sword and hacked straight to the five elements' halo. Wherever the blood lights passed through, the five-element halo was swiftly split into pieces, which was as simple as tearing a rag apart. The faces of the Queen of Sky and the King of Earth changed dramatically. A trace of panic flashed across their eyes. Qingming's eyes glinted with a green light, and green flames shot out from his pupils. Looking at the five elements halo, he raised his hands with gloves forming a cross sign, and then launched a strange hand seal. Strands of consciousness suddenly flowed out from Qingming's mind like streams and instantly infiltrated the five elements halo. After having received Qingming's consciousness, the five elements halo, which had originally been split into pieces earlier, slowly condensed with a speed that was visible to the naked eye. On that five elements halo, the king corpse's ferocious body suddenly flashed up like an electric light. As soon as it appeared, the pair of eyes, which didn't have human emotions, glimmered with a flickering green flame. At this moment, through the corpse flame, the king corpse formed a delicate connection with Qingming as if Qingming's spirit had been consigned to it. The king corpse's pupils turned green, his eyes suddenly became strange. The hair on its 3-meter-tall body, which looked like an ape, began to quiver, even without the wind. Each strand of hair contained tremendous aura. The king corpse's body suddenly trembled as its hair fell, as hard as steel needles, shooting straight at Shuryen like a shower. The attacking range covered the entire space around him. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Innumerable hairs from the king corpse blanketed the sky and then crashed into Shuryen's body before Shuryen could react. Bang, bang, bang. Hair that hit on his upper body was like hitting steel, producing sonorous sounds. None of them could injure him. However, as his lower body hadn't been mutated yet, the king corpse's hair could quickly pierce through it. Shuryen's 2 legs, which already looked ugly as they had been pecked by the flock of birds of the King of Earth earlier, now had been drilled by those strands of hair, and thus looked terrible. Although the bones had not been damaged yet, blood and flesh had already been blended up. Following the king corpse's hairs, millions of flows of corpse aura spread out and destroyed Shuryen's legs. After the corpse aura had penetrated his body, it quickly ran along the tendons and rushed into his waist. Shuryen slightly shuddered, hastily urging the swirl on his abdomen along with gathering the fire power of the earth flame at the same time. After that, he pushed that power toward his legs and struggled with the corpse aura, preventing it from invading his body. Ow, ow, ow. After the first blow had been launched successfully, the king corpse continued roaring and dashing forward. When he used his innate secret art of cadaver, countless corpse aura was condensed inside its claws, making them 10 meters longer. Its claws flashed up and snatched at Shuryen. Surging corpse aura filled the entire sky and massively rolled toward Shuryen. This blow of the king corpse was extremely sharp and contained the resentment of millions of creatures in the world. This evil blow also influenced Shuryen's soul. Shuryen tried to press down the pain on his legs. The star shield was launched, countless starlight flashed up and wrapped around his body, giving it full protection. He then glided over and attempted to release one slash. Cling, cling. The king corpse's devil sharp claw was cut off. Although its nails were also broken, they were still very stinging, looking like 10 sharp swords full of horrendous momentum dashing towards Shuryen. Puff, puff, puff. The sharp, long nails pierced the star shield, shaking numerous star dots, causing them to burst out altogether. The king corpse's nails exploded together with the star shield and gradually dissipated. However, there were still 10 half-a-meter-long fragmented nails left stabbing Shuryen's chest with undiminished speed. See. 10 pointed sharp nails like 10 small swords struck his mutant body, piercing 3 centimeters into his body. It was only 3 centimeters. 10 sharp nails strangely shook all of a sudden. The strength of those nails constantly penetrated Shurian's chest, but was intercepted by a mysterious barrier. The king corpse's claws could raise the mountain and destroy the earth. It could be described as one of the strongest attacks of the king corpse, or could be compared to the full-power spirit-leveled sharp sword. It was even difficult for a god realm warrior with a full defense to resist it. If the warriors were not cautious, this blow could pierce them to death. Qingming also believed that Shurian would certainly be dead under this blow. He had witnessed many powerful warriors being pierced through just by one claw of the king corpse. There was no exception. However, the result this time gave him an inexplicable horror. It was only 3 centimeters. No matter how hard those 10 nails had tried or had gathered plenty of corpse aura around, they couldn't move forward any further, not even 1 centimeter. Qingming was aghast. Shurian's face also changed. He suddenly felt a strange power in his countless muscle fibers, releasing a violent counterattack that not only prevented the attack of those 10 nails, but also defiantly resisted the opponents. Billions of muscle fibers interweaved into numerous hands and slowly pushed the king corpse's claws out of Shurian's body. Ow, wailing. The king corpse roared and howled crazily. It barged forward one more time. The broken nails grew again and reached 10 meters in just a blink. It was bizarre. Shurian's eyes slightly changed, and he suddenly revealed a strange smile. One of his hands pushed forward, and the crazy power of his body instantly churned up, fusing with the ice-cold flame, the Holy Spirit God, the earth flame, and the profound chi of his body, which condensed into a huge handprint like an enormous mountain crashing toward the king corpse. When the king corpse rushed toward Shurian and was only about 5 meters away from him, the king corpse was suddenly grasped by a life seal as big as a mountain. The king corpse's 3-meter-tall body was tied up tightly, and a vibrant living aura infiltrated his body. The king corpse was originally ferocious, but now became stagnant and motionless. Its pupils turned bleary and blankly stared at Shurian. At the same time, a subtle connection between Shurian and the king corpse appeared. Kill, kill, kill. An evil intent came up from the king corpse's mind and instantly went into Shurian's sea of consciousness. Shurian's eyes flashed up as he quickly moved that ferocious aura to his host's soul. Without waiting for the king corpse's response, Shurian connected the king corpse with the host's soul in the sea of consciousness to open the third eye at his glabella. A bunch of silver light shot out from the third eye, zoomed across the space, and directly fell into the king corpse's brain. That silver light instantly found the soul-controlling technique seed which Qingming had placed inside the king corpse's brain. The silver force, which belonged to the 9 Serenity's soul-devouring flame, shone exactly on the soul-controlling seed. It was not different from the method that Shurian had applied on Fan Shangyun's consciousness, which was shining the dazzling light at it and burning it to ashes. The force that had imprisoned the king corpse disappeared into thin air. The murderous intent inside the king corpse's head, which was formerly inflamed, now gradually calmed down. After having been under the soul-controlling technique's confinement over tens of thousands of years, the king corpse finally took back its initiatives and restored its spiritual knowledge. Who are you? A strand of consciousness followed the king corpse's soul coming into Shurian's sea of consciousness. Don't ask who I am. I am not your enemy. Shurian was overjoyed as he hurriedly forged iron when it was still hot. I have removed the soul-controlling technique which had existed tens of thousands of years inside your brain. I give you freedom. From now on, you can choose your own life. No one will enslave you anymore. Freedom, freedom. The king corpse's spirit churned up. Some kind of force burned up in its bleary eyes and wiped the green fire out of its body. Tui. Hierarchy of the corpse's god sect Qingming suddenly spurted out a mouthful of blood while his eyes showed his fear. He blankly looked at Shurian and then shifted his eyes to the king corpse that was gradually coming to his senses. He hysterically screamed out, "No, it's impossible. Absolutely impossible." Chapter 356, Looking forward to your growth. Chapter 356. Looking forward to your growth. Qingming had never been this panicked before. King Corpse was the fundamental foundation of the Corpse God sect, and thus, the King Corpse's mightiness was related to the Corpse's God sect. Thanks to its existence, Qingming could be one of the dominators in the Endless Sea. It could be said that without King Corpse, Qingming would not have had his status today. Regardless of whether it was now or in the future, King Corpse was the assurance of his strength. Without King Corpse, he would lose his current status and his position in the Corpse's God sect might be under siege as well. The cultivation of the Corpse's God sect's secret techniques had some relations with King Corpse as well. Once King Corpse was out of his control, it would be difficult for him to break through the next realms, and he could never make any further step for the rest of his life. The King Corpse's abnormal change was tens of thousands of times harder to accept than Shurian killing him by a sword. Having seen King Corpse gradually restore his consciousness, Qingming was totally panicked. He was truly terrified. He had lost everything. "You're free." In the middle of the void, Shurian held the mysterious giant sword and transmitted his consciousness continuously, waking up the King Corpse's spiritual mind that had been bound for tens of thousands of years. His efforts soon received an effect. King Corpse no longer took actions toward Shurian, and the murderous intent in the King Corpse's soul also disappeared. It was blankly standing in the void while its soul seemed to gradually regain vague memories, as if it just remembered something extremely important. Qingming was roaring nonstop beneath, but he had no way to influence the King Corpse anymore. The King Corpse's originally empty eyes slowly regained human emotions, looking like it was sinking deep in thought and searching for something. Shurian didn't say a word nor took the opportunity to take action. He was vigilant while continuing to send his friendly intents to it. That year, he had used his consciousness to contact the 10,000-year Earth Flame. Right now, he was using the same way to build a good relationship with the King Corpse. It was unknown whether it was Shurian's persistence or his friendly consciousness that had an effect on the King Corpse, who had formerly been stunned and was suddenly ignited with killing intent. However, its target now was not Shurian, but Qingming. The 5 elements halo under Shurian's feet churned up, looking like a big light net dashing to cover Qingming. The Queen of Sky and the King of Earth were aghast and subconsciously ran far away, but were still afraid of becoming the King Corpse's target. As they were warriors of the two to see, they clearly knew how terrifying the King Corpse was. In recent years, Qingming had taken advantage of the King Corpse to kill many high-class warriors. Being able to use the 5 elements force as well as being invulnerable to sabers or spears, King Corpse could be immune to any kinds of attack. It could control the corpse aura and turn it into a steady stream of power. On this island, once King Corpse started the slaughter, even Fan Xiangyun was frightened. A trace of despair flashed in Qingming's eyes. The King Corpse relentlessly attacked him like a sword smashing down his last hope, making him realize that from now on, King Corpse would no longer be under his control. He understood the King Corpse's mightiness better than anyone else. As soon as the King Corpse took action, Qingming desperately stared at Shurian with pernicious eyes and roared angrily, "Shurian, I will kill you sooner or later. I want you to taste the fiercest torture in the world." While releasing an ear-splitting scream, a green flame burned up in Qingming's eyes, forming a strange fire. Inside that flame, numerous creeping corpse shadows launched strong evil forces. Qingming's inky black tunic gathered the corpse aura around him, forming a bunch of sharpened streams of light that quickly zoomed toward the west and instantly disappeared into the horizon. When the King Corpse descended from the sky, bringing along the 5 elements halo, Qingming had already vanished, leaving no trace. The Queen of Sky and the King of Earth exchanged looks and they both chose to retreat. Their bodies simultaneously emitted dazzling lights that distorted the space around and then disappeared into thin air. God Realm warriors had the ability to transport tens of thousands of miles in just a blink. By either using secret treasures or bursting their body strength, they could not only move thousands of miles, but also hide their auras and souls. Except for someone who had the ability to detect the souls or cast their supernatural powers to catch up, it was challenging to find them again. To pull up the roots, One should have supernatural strength as well as a higher cultivation base than that of the opponents to identify their souls. Shuryen obviously didn't have that kind of ability. That was why he could only helplessly watch the Queen of Sky and the King of Earth disappear. Right after Qingming, Fan Xingyun, and the King of Earth left, Shuryen was about to take action against the other warriors around, but then realized that they had left or hidden themselves a long time ago. Some of them used secret treasures, some used secret techniques, and others burst their body strength to flee away. Shuryen's face darkened. He only had Nirvana Realm Cultivation Base and thus couldn't detect the opponent's souls. If he had Sky Realm Cultivation Base and used the advantage of his host's soul, it would allow him to find 1 or 2 Sky Realm warriors, and if he had God Realm Cultivation Base, he could surely pursue and find the souls of Qingming, Fan Xingyun, and the King of Earth. Unfortunately, his realm now was just the second sky of Nirvana Realm. After all the warriors had completely disappeared, there was only a flock of corpse slaves, 2 sky corpses, and himself. After destroying the gravitational field, Shuryen stood in silence, surrounded by dead mountains while continually absorbing the sky and earth aura around him. He had killed around 10 warriors at the Nirvana Realm or lower, using the mysterious giant sword. Their auras all rolled into his body. These auras were very precious to him as they could help him complete his mutation process. Thus, he would not let them slip away. When the King Corpse had contact with him, it transmitted an amount of corpse aura which wrapped around Shuryen's legs. Now, it started retrieving that aura, revealing Shuryen's stickily bloody legs. However, under the immortal martial spirit's effect, his wounds began to recover. During the process of developing and reconnecting muscles and tendons, he had to endure a great pain. However, thanks to the immortal martial spirit's effect, the wounds healed very quickly. The immortal martial spirit was really worthy of the sacred martial spirit. The more severe the wound was, the faster the healing speed would be. If one got a minor wound in battle, it could be healed immediately. Standing in the void and sensing the healing process of the immortal martial spirit, Shuryen sneered, feeling relaxed. Right at this moment, the mysterious giant sword suddenly slipped away from his hand, turned into a flow of blood light, and then drilled into the blood vein ring, staying there silently motionless. When the giant sword was gone, Shuryen felt extremely fatigued. Even lifting his arms or legs was very hard and heavy to him. That was the after effect of the second sky of Rampage. As he could feel an impetuous aura pouring into his body as well as the great pain when his meridians were being torn apart, his face immediately became discolored. The number of warriors who had died in his hands was quite big. Moreover, their realms were quite profound. Thus, the auras exuded after they died were far beyond Shuryen's endurance. They penetrated into his meridians, bringing along numerous negative emotions of fear, despair, and resentment that gradually affected his mind. Using his experiences, as soon as Shuryen felt he was about to be unable to bear it anymore, he immediately left and found a way to give vent. From below, the King Corpse was standing together with the 2 sky corpses, 1 male and 1 female, staring at Shuryen, seeming to say something. Shuryen frowned. Even though he had the ability to connect with them, he still had a feeling of insecurity. He wasn't sure when he would lose his consciousness or burst out while those 3 sky corpses were not truly obedient yet. He also wasn't certain whether they would do anything to him when he lost his mind. These 3 sky corpses were intimidating as they already had their own intelligence. With the passage of time, the wisdom of the King Corpse would increase. Shuryen understood that once the King Corpse recovered its spiritual wisdom, very few people in the Endless Sea could control it. Even Qingming, who had been studying corpse controlling technique for many years, had run away. So, who else dared to confront it? Perhaps only he could. However, his situation was very special as he could lose his mind or give vent at any time. He needed time to release the harshness inside his body. In the meantime, if the 3 corpses were on his side, he didn't know what would happen. He didn't dare to take risks. Therefore, after weighing his odds, he immediately made a decision. You're free. From now on, you can choose your own path of evolution. I liberate you and don't want to bind you as your former master did. Thus, you don't need to follow me. It is the best for your evolution. Take care. I hope you will become the world's top new species. I hope we will see each other again. If you can speak by that time, we can be partners and friends. After having sent out his consciousness to the 3 sky corpses, Shuryen didn't wait for them to reply, but instantly started the starlight, turning into a beam of light flying away. The 3 corpses looked at the sky, a trace of reluctance flashing up in their eyes. They seemed to want to catch up, but they didn't move. Chapter 357, Fame of Brutality. Chapter 357, Fame of Brutality. King Corpse and the 2 sky corpses raised their heads looking at the sky, standing motionlessly. After a while, the sky corpses' eyes glinted with a strange light as if they had been enlightened about something. The king corpse suddenly leaped up, quickly moving around the wooden coffins in the mountain caves, seeming to remove the corpse controlling technique to help the corpse slaves inside awaken. Not long after, the wooden coffins, one by one, followed the king corpse's instruction to fly west. The other 2 sky corpses seemed to have reached a delicate connection with the king corpse, keeping up with the others. When they arrived at the west side of the wind island, they saw the king corpse sitting on a wooden coffin, floating on the sea. The 2 sky corpses flew over to their wooden coffins. The lids of the 2 coffins suddenly opened, and the 2 corpses got in and lied down. When they got in their wooden coffins, the king corpse's body also shrank and lied down in his coffin. More than 10 coffins were floating on the sea, quietly moving forward to the west at full speed. Their direction was headed toward the headquarters of the corpse's god sect. On their way, any warrior who saw this strange scene fled. A row of coffins not under control of the corpse's god sect was floating on the sea, which gave those warriors a chilling feeling as they didn't know what happened that these corpses could become this weird. The Goof family on the Thousand Swords Peak. At this moment, the Thousand Swords Peak had become the base where forces in the Hangluo Sea gathered to deal with demon dwellers. Gu Shao, Yu Qin, and the master of the Dongfeng family, Feng Zhu, also assembled here. Even Chao Jilan and Mangu brought their fellows here. In recent days, with the Thousand Swords Peak as the center, all top-class warriors from big forces of different seas gathered and discussed the detailed plan to deal with demon dwellers altogether. The sea in front of the Thousand Swords Peak naturally became the vehement fighting area between demon dwellers and warriors. Both sides put their great forces into this area. Half a month had passed, and many high-class warriors and demon dwellers had died in battle. Presently, the group of Gu Shao, Yu Qin, and Dong Fengju were happy due to some small victories of recent wars. In the past few days, the master of the Chao family, Chao Qiudao, with the palace headmaster Yang Yitian had responded. Their forces had started departing from the Tuda and Sky Seas, approaching Hangluo Sea. That news elated everyone. The group of Gu Shao and Yu Qin clearly knew the mightiness of Chao Qiudao and Yang Yitian, and that their appearance would give the situation an earth-shaking change. The demon dwellers' massacre of warriors in the Hangluo Sea seemed to have aroused the anger of the 2 of them to the point that they had decided to unite and deal with the demon dwellers, although they hadn't been in contact with each other for decades. It was unknown whether the demon dwellers had also received the news because their attacks had slowed down in recent days as if they were waiting for something. The wind blew strongly and rain fell heavily as a big storm was on the horizon. The Hangluo Sea was like a huge feast of strength, a place where high-class warriors from different seas gathered. Everyone's face was excited as if they saw the dawn of victory. They started to discuss what would be the next step in attacking the opponent. While everyone was delighted, Qingming, the Queen of Sky, and the King of Earth all wore dark eyes as if they had just had a dead child. Qingming, is that little rascal Shuryen dead? Gu Shao was sitting neatly on a god sword, revealing a rare smile. You guys had previously sent a message saying that you could kill Shuryen. With the unity of the 3 of you, together with the Queen of Sky's illusory soul, it should have been very easy to obliterate him. Yu Qin and Dong Fengju also looked toward the other 3, instantly feeling shocked and surprised when seeing their eyes. Chao Jilan was sitting at the Chao seat, and Chu Yanqing was standing behind Yu Qin. They both immediately shifted their attentive eyes toward those three when they heard Gu Xiao's question. After arriving here, Qingming, the Queen of Sky and the King of Earth all kept silent with dark eyes as they found a place to sit down. Under the others' attentive looks, they simultaneously sighed. Everyone was stunned. Their expression became eccentric. As they felt something strange, they paid even more attention to the other three. Qingming, you guys couldn't kill him? Gu Xiao was startled, not believing that was true, then asked with surprise, even though his strength can be equivalent to that of a god realm with the help of external forces in a short time. That little rascal surely cannot escape from the unity of the three of you. I know that Qingming's king corpse has also been on the Yinwing Island, and we all know how intimidating it is. The king corpse alone is enough to kill that kid. Is there something else that happened unexpectedly? As soon as Gu Xiao mentioned the king corpse, Fan Xiangyun and the King of Earth instantly shuddered with their extremely odd faces as if a sword had stabbed them. Qingming's eyes were flooded with resentment like someone touching his wound. He suddenly stood up, looking toward Gu Xiao. Gu Xiao was astonished. He felt awkward as he didn't know what to say for now. How was it? The king corpse has gotten out of Qingming's control. The King of Earth shook his head, revealing a smile, and then reluctantly said, only ghosts know what happened in the end. That little rascal launched a strike on the king corpse, and it immediately turned and tried to kill Qingming, and forced us to run away. Run away? The surrounding warriors who were thrilled suddenly became dazed when they heard the absurd story. Chao Jilan shuddered, secretly gritting her teeth. Her beautiful eyes were flooded with fear and incredibility. Xu Yanqing was also stunned as he looked bewilderedly at the weird faces of the three people of Qingming's group. She was frozen for a while and didn't know what had happened. After that, many warriors noisily screamed out, "Myth," as they felt that the three people of Qingming's group had lost their minds and talked nonsense. Queen of Sky, what happened to your body? Yuqin of the Heaven Lake Divine Land discovered the abnormal things, surprisingly asked, what happened? Fan Xiangyun was still wearing a green skirt. Her big firm breasts, which made other women envious with admiration, had been deflated. It wasn't just a normal deflation. It became totally flat. What had happened? How come the Queen of Sky's enormous bosom that made men crazy and women jealous has completely disappeared? In the palace, after having heard Yuqin say this, a majority of warriors all looked toward Fan Xiangyun with eccentric faces as if they had discovered a new continent, secretly exclaiming and continuously guessing. Fan Xiangyun's enchanting face suddenly became livid as if she had just been poisoned, becoming contorted, terribly changing without any trace of the charm that she used to have. The instant change made other people freeze. Any warrior who looked at her breasts felt stinging in their eyes. Some warriors with low cultivation base had to hold their heads to keep them from rolling on the ground. Queen of Sky, what are you doing? Dong Fengju's face changed color. His question was like thousands of beasts roaring, breaking the illusion in the palace. As he saw the group of warriors behind spurting out mouthfuls of blood, the Dong Feng family's people all stood up, shouting out loud. Fan Xiangyun's face was distorted. She clenched her teeth, bowed her head gasping for breath, seeming to try to restrain her extreme rage. Let it go, let it go. Don't fight with each other. As Yuqin felt that the situation was intense, she rushed out and made peace. She then looked toward the three people of the King of Earth's group and calmly asked, what happened after all? The King of Earth constantly shook his head with an odd face. He looked at Fan Xiangyun, who was about to carry on a massacre, and then threw a glance at Qingming, who wanted to use his heaven flame. He sighed, shook his head, and said, that was the consequence from the deed of that rascal Shiryan. Shiryan. Everyone lowered their voices, murmuring his name while their faces were overwhelmed with fear and surging waves burst out inside their heart. How could it be? Just using the external forces to have the strength which could reluctantly be comparable to that of God Realm warriors, what did he rely on to make those famous master warriors not only not succeed in killing him, but also fall into such a desolate end? Was it the truth? Warriors inside the palace suddenly quieted down as if there was an invisible soundproof wall enclosing everyone. Even the sound of a falling needle could not be heard. This thing, can you tell us more details? Gu Xiao hesitated a little bit, carefully choosing every word to avoid irritating Qingming and Fan Xiangyun. We don't know what tricks that little rascal used. If it keeps going like this, I am afraid that we will not be able to kill him next time either. The King of Earth looked at Qingming and the Queen of Earth. Seeing their uncomfortable faces, he revealed a wry smile and said that kid's tricks were very strange. His sword is even more devilish. There's nothing he could not break as it smashed down all obstacles we came at it with. The most frightening thing is that we don't know what method he used to help the King Corpse escape our mind control. It was partially because the rebellion of the Sky Corpses that the mind-martial spirit of the Queen of Sky lost its effect, and we eventually had to flee. Sigh, it was such a terrible thing to remember. If you guys encounter that little rascal, you must be very careful. You cannot just use your common sense to deal with him. Those warriors' faces immediately changed when they listened to his last sentence. If we do not eradicate this rascal, we will not live in peace, even if you can expel the demon dwellers. After contemplating, Fan Xiangyun gritted her teeth and resentfully said. Qingming agreed with a nod, coldly saying, we can delay the fight with the demon dwellers for now. We need to obliterate this rascal. We can't let him continue living. If he leaves the endless sea and escapes our pursuit, he will return and massacre all of us. No one can stop him, even Chao Qiudao and Yang Yitian. Right now, he is even more terrible than the Yang Tian Emperor. I agree, Fan Xiangyun said with resentment. I agree too, said the King of Earth. Everyone was all stunned like wood. A long time after that, Gu Xiao looked at Yu Qin and Dong Fengju and realized a trace of fear deep inside their eyes. They were obviously beginning to be scared. Chapter 358, Blessing and Peril Linked Together. Chapter 358, Blessing and Peril Linked Together. On the Wind Cloud Archipelago. It was an island situated in the chaotic area between the Hangluo Sea and the Blackwater Sea, which now became the gathering place for ordinary people of the Hangluo Sea. Under the arrangement of the Three Gods sect, Gu family and Dongfeng family, they had been migrated here. The sky and earth auras on this island were a little diluted, unsuitable for warriors to cultivate. Meanwhile, the Hangluo Sea was recently engaged in battles frequently. As the demon dwellers kept hunting and killing ordinary mortals, those three big forces united and gathered their people to move here. This place was packed and boisterous and obviously not lacking pleasuring places. Although there were around 1 million people seeking refuge on this small island, they all lived in simple wooden houses or tents inside the barren mountains. In order to survive, ordinary people naturally would not care about this. What they wished was that they could quickly leave the demon dwellers' territory. There was a small market on the island where various types of daily necessities like grains, rice, wheat, and fresh water could be found. In the market, there was a brothel named Spring Breeze Pavilion. The business there was not going so well recently as the ordinary people's interest in pleasure had decreased. The money that they earned was used to purchase food and other necessities for their daily life. However, in the past 2 days, Spring Breeze Pavilion had welcomed a special guest who spent very generously, paying for all the ladies there. It had already been 1 day of enjoying lustful pleasure, but he still wasn't exhausted. The face of Spring Breeze Pavilion's hostess was full of joy. She held a heavy bag of crystal coins and felt happy, thinking to herself that she had to meet all the requirements of that guest. Many women with typical appearances kept going in and out from a standard room. The women leaving the room all displayed excitement and satisfaction on their faces. However, every one of them had to hobble out of the room, although they all had walked in the room normally. The hostess Yunjia stood right in front of the room with the bag of coins in her hand and peeked inside the room from time to time. Not long after that, a lady who was about 20 years old stepped out with her naked breasts. She staggered out of the room with a blushing face. Just after a few steps, she released a scream, and hurriedly stretched her hand holding onto a nearby column. Xiao Taohua, how was it? Is he continuing? Yunjia rushed forward to support the girl whose limbs were all numb as she asked with surprise. The girl shyly nodded with a blushing face and watery eyes. She prettily said, "That young master is not human. His payment is very generous. He has spent so much already." Yoonjia slightly chuckled and supported the girl to another room to rest. At the same time, she threw a quick glance into the room, seeing 5 women sleeping deeply, and mumbled with a low voice, "Not enough girls. I have to tell Honging to send some more girls over. If things continue like this, in another day and night, all of these girls will be exhausted." "Yoonjia, what is the master's identity?" Xiao Taohua asked with her red face leaning against the window as she lightly yawned. "It has been 2 days, but he hasn't taken any rest. Our sisters have taken turns to serve him, but couldn't knock him out. If it continues like this, I won't be able to stand anymore. Yoonjia, please call someone else. I have to rest tomorrow. He has exhausted my body, and thus I have no strength to do it again." While muttering, she secretly gritted her teeth and then suddenly giggled. No one knew what wonderful part she was thinking of. Yoonjia cursed under her breath, but her face was full of kindness and gentleness. "If Honging brings more people here on time tomorrow, I will not bother you. However, if her people are late, you will have to do it again. We absolutely cannot stop. Otherwise, he might destroy our Spring Breeze Pavilion." Xiao Taohua was astonished while her eyes were as bright as stars. She then said with a hazy face, "He is a guy that can make people love and hate him at the same time. If he lays his eyes on me, I will leave everything to follow him." "Well," Yoonjia sneered and said, "I am sure that with his strength, you will not survive more than 1 month, as he will kill you on the bed. You better not have that thought." After having listened to these words, the girl was shocked, contemplated a moment before shaking her head, and then forced a miserable smile. Yoonjia went out, helped another girl who was shaking, and took her into the room to rest. At night, she arranged 7 charming ladies, who had been brought here from other brothels, to serve that guest one by one. Either day or night, there were always heart-stirring sounds coming from that room, as if there was a tireless monster continually battling inside. Another day had passed, and that room had begun to quiet down. "No one is allowed to disturb me. Otherwise, bear your own consequence." A voice came out from the room. The last girl staggered out of the room. She just screamed out, "Ah," and suddenly fainted, completely exhausted. 3 days had passed in just a blink. During these 3 days, that guest didn't have any requirements. He didn't call any girls in to serve him, nor did he have meals or drinks sent in. He just stayed in the room. Yoonjia was secretly scared, but didn't dare to visit and check on him. After 3 days of rest, the girls gradually restored their strength. They surprisingly realized that their skin became smoother, and the wrinkles on some 30-year-old girls had disappeared. Their faces were snow-white and glowingly healthy. A few frail girls also recognized that their bodies were much better, no longer weak as before. All the girls gathered, twittering on about their discoveries. They all felt several years younger, as there were no more wrinkles on their faces, their skin renewed its vitality, and even their strength was much better. These discoveries surprised them greatly. They were now grateful to the guest who had tortured them badly the past few days. They gathered in front of that guest's room to see if he needed anything else. After having learned that those girls had some physical changes, Yoonjia was secretly astonished. Waves of love surged up again after many years of restfulness. She waited for another day, but didn't hear any commotion from the room. She couldn't wait any longer, nor cared about that guest's rules. She pushed open the door of the room and entered. The room was empty, with only a heavy bag of crystal coins set on the table. After having heard the news, the other girls all rushed to the room and then discussed boisterously together. As that mysterious guest had secretly left, they were embarrassed and resentful at the same time, blaming him for being ruthless. A small light boat. A sturdy young man with a solemn face was sitting on a 3-meter-long wooden boat. He was looking straight ahead with his cold eyes. There was neither sail nor oar in the boat, but it was moving very fast on the sea like a fish swimming. This man was Shuryen. During the battle on Wind Island, he had borrowed the strength of the 3 great living forms and used the mysterious sword to kill more than 10 warriors with a high cultivation base, while having been surrounded by the 3 God Realm warriors Qiming, the Queen of Sky, and the King of Earth. He had harvested vigorous aura from the dead warriors. That significant amount of aura was unimaginable. During the mystery martial spirit's purification process, he had once again fallen into a backfire that was much crazier and fiercer than before. Reluctantly, he had gone to Spring Breeze Pavilion to give vent to his sexual desire in 3 days and nights, releasing all of the crazy lust in his body. He had also balanced his mind and had completed the mutation process. At this time, 369 acupuncture points and more than 6 billions of his muscle fibers in his body had completed their mutation. After the mutation had finished, he could feel the perfection and balance of his body. Previously, when the mutation wasn't complete, he had often felt dizzy, like having a constant hangover. His 2 legs couldn't bear the terrible weight of his upper body, and thus his bones had usually made cracking sounds as if they had been about to break at any time. After the mutation was complete, he realized that the weight of his body could be compared to a mountain that was hundreds of meters high and weighed tens of thousands of tons. However, he didn't have any abnormal feelings. He just felt that the inside of each muscle fiber and acupuncture point contained some sort of violent, bursting power. Although he didn't use profound chi or martial spirit, he still believed that he could defeat a second sky of Nirvana realm warrior in a battle. The power inside his body surprised him a lot. The mutation of the petrifaction martial spirit had reached its extreme. Once he used his strength, his body would instantly show a purple hue, while the surging power from 369 acupuncture points and 6 billion muscle fibers irresistibly spewed out. The power really belonged to him. It was not from the external force anymore. The external force from the fusion of the ice-cold flame, the Holy Spirit God, and the earth flame would be consumed after each battle. After the completion of the mutation, they split off, which made him a little bit depressed. At this time, the ice-cold flame, the Holy Spirit God, and the earth flame had come back to the blood vein ring. As they had been exhausted, they had entered their long-term dormant state. He had no way to communicate with them. That made him feel a little guilty, but he didn't know what else to do. He thought to himself that when he reached a certain extent of the realm, he would make it up to them. The boat was moving effortlessly on the sea. Shiryan was going to an island in the Blackwater Sea today. He had asked around and knew that some people of the Xia family were residing there. After contemplating for a while, he leaped up from the boat and then descended on the island. He stayed hidden in the mountains and searched for those he wanted to find. Chapter 359. Tell her that I am still alive. Chapter 359. Tell her that I am still alive. Deep in the mountains, Shiryan wandered erratically like a ghost toward the forest. He flew incredibly fast through the woods, not following a straight line, but an arc instead. Recently, he had tried both the electric shift and starlight, and luckily he had discovered that these 2 techniques could be combined, which helped enhance his flying speed one step further and made his flying trajectory more unpredictable. The electric shift moved in a straight line, taking the instantaneous burst of profound chi as a motive. Starlight was synchronized with the stars moving tracks in the sky. The directions and timing both had marvelous changes. In a fight, Starlight had a miraculous effect which made people unable to distinguish between an attack and his whereabouts. However, it was such a waste if it was just being used as an ordinary means of transportation. After having combined electric shift and starlight, he used profound chi as a motive as well as relying on the flying rule of starlight to follow an arc-shaped track. By doing that, not only did he consume less of his strength, but the flying speed was also faster. Moreover, he could change the trajectory instantly and shift to starlight at once. Therefore, if he encountered enemies on the way, he could confidently move forward, relying on the unpredictable starlight to sabotage all of the enemy's attacks. The news of many forces in the Hanglua Sea uniting to exterminate him had been spread throughout the endless sea. All warriors had heard about this. During this time, Shiryan had searched for the whereabouts of the Xia family's people and received the news along the way. After the 3 strange living forms had separated, he had no power to confront God Realm warriors. In this situation, he had to make wise choices. Moreover, The mutation of his body had completed, so he didn't need to continue taking risks anymore, and thus, he chose to leave the Hangluo Sea to find Xia Xinyan. On the way, he was always vigilant. Once he detected warriors with a higher realm, he would proactively avoid them, preventing his whereabouts from being revealed. In the forest, he effortlessly flew like a misty smoke, appearing and disappearing like a ghost. Gradually, he entered deep inside the forest. Lush, verdant, immeasurably high ancient trees were everywhere. Although the sky and earth auras inside the forest were not rich, plants and trees still grew very well. Some beasts also appeared from time to time. However, most of them were low-grade beasts, and thus, he didn't really care about them. Not long after that, a figure slowly appeared, vigilantly looking around. That person's eyes suddenly brightened up when looking toward where he was hiding. "Friend, where do you come from?" Zhou took a deep breath and was secretly alert while he concentrated profound qi in his two hands. Rustling. Shurian pushed the dense leaves and stepped outside. He looked at the Sky Realm consecrator of the Xia family and asked, "Are you a Xia family member?" "Why you need to ask when you already know?" Zhou snorted while his hands emitted a flow of dazzling purple light suspending like misty, miasmatic smoke in a swamp, dashing toward Shurian. In that smoky light, numerous broken green points collided with each other, bursting out a tremendous power, enlarging the covering range of the smoke further. A powerful binding force came out from the purple smoke and enclosed Shurian in a scope of 50 meters. Shurian looked worried. His eyes flashed up with a strange light, and his skin instantly turned purple. Zhou's eyes lit up while he felt astonished. He couldn't help but be about to take actions again. This person clearly only had the Nirvana realm, but still was able to break down his binding net that he had cast out. Moreover, not many Nirvana realm warriors had that kind of strength. The fact that a Nirvana realm warrior could give such pressure to a Sky realm warrior like Zhou made him immediately change his contemptuous look toward Shurian. He was about to put forth all of his powers to kill that unidentified little rascal. "I am Shurian." Just as Zhou was ready to release a brutal blow, the young man on the tree suddenly spoke up with a low voice and solemn face. Zhou, who was gathering his strength, instantly ceased the attack as he his words. His eyes brightened up, and his face changed to be cheerful. "Your young master Yan." Shurian slightly nodded, carefully observing the expression changes on Zhou's face. He waited until he was certain that Zhou was honest and sincere. When he felt assured, he then jumped down from the tree, stood in front of Zhou and said, "I want to know where your lady is." "I don't know." Zhou shook his head, forced a faint smile, and said, "Several days ago, while we were on the way to the Snow Dragon Island, we received news from Our Lady saying that we had to stop going to the Snow Dragon Island and return to the Hangluo Sea. After having received that news, we immediately went back, and since then, we haven't had any other news from her. We don't know where she is now." Shurian's face suddenly darkened. "Young Master Yan, there is a rumor about you. I don't know if it is true or not." A trace of grief glimmered in Zhou's eyes. The rumor that Qian had killed Xia Shengchuan had spread out through the Hangluo Sea. However, Zhou didn't want to believe it was true. He just assumed that it was just some trick of the Gu family and the Dongfeng family used to split up the Xia family. Seeing Shurian right now, Zhou could no longer bear the doubt and thus finally asked, "The rumor is true." Shurian nodded with cold eyes. "That Qian destroyed his soul right in front of me." Zhou's eyes immediately turned red. He gritted his teeth, stiffened his face, not saying a word. "And you guys, how are you now?" Shurian kept silent for a while and asked again. "The Xia family has been divided into two sides. One side is led by Xia Ruisheng. After having heard about Master's death, they have chosen to submit to the Holy Spirit sect and the Spirit Treasure Wonderland of the Blackwater Sea. Our side continues to stay in some peaceful sea areas and wait for Our Lady. However, she is still not here yet, so we are very worried, not knowing if something has happened to her," Zhou said. "Nothing will happen to your lady. Perhaps she will come back to find you soon." Shurian spoke to Zhou after having contemplated a little bit. "Don't tell anyone that I have come here. Currently, all forces in the endless sea want to kill me. You guys need to be careful. If your lady sends out some news here, please let her know that I am still alive. Young Master Yen. Zhou Yu was astonished, wanted to say something but then stopped. All right, that's it. Take care. The Xia family will not have to hide for so long anymore. I believe the Xia family will rise again soon. Shuryan didn't mention Xia Jingho as he was afraid that he might have given Zhou Yu too much hope. If Xia Jingho didn't get any better after using the Vein Spirit Pellet, Zhou Yu would feel extremely disappointed. After having finished his words, Shuryan waved his hand and left determined without lingering or waiting for Zhou Yu to ask anything further. Zhou Yu dazedly watched Shuryan's figure gradually disappearing with a complicated face. This was the first time he met Shuryan, and he felt that Shuryan was indeed worthy of being Yang Tian Emperor's descendant. He had something to be proud of. Zhou Yu, who has just come? A figure appeared. Xia Shenmao flew over from the rear of the mountain and then asked with a cautious face. Was it the people of Xia Ruixing coming here to persuade us again? I don't care if they leave, but convincing us to yield to the Holy Spirit sect and the Spirit Treasure Wonderland is too much. They don't feel ashamed. That year, when the Xia family was still strong, the Holy Spirit sect and Spirit Treasure Wonderland were always under our oppression. But right now, Xia Ruixing and his men even surrender to those two forces. They are shameless. If eldest brother knew this, he would certainly be mad. Master is dead. Zhou Yu's eyes were reddened. He muttered, he has just confirmed it. It is true that Qian has killed Master. His soul has been scattered and perished. Xia Shenmao's body shook violently as if he was hit by a fatal blow. He staggered backward a few steps and then glassily said, Impossible, impossible. This is not true, not true. The person who has just come here is Shuryan. Zhou Yu released a sigh. He is worthy of being the strongest one of the Yang family. He has reached the Nirvana realm, and his power now is terrifying. He will not just stop at his current realm. It seems the rumor is true. Another consecrator of the Xia family came out, holding a letter in his hand, and said in fear, Our informant has just sent more news, saying that Shuryan has killed hundreds of warriors even though he has been alone in the Hanguo Sea. Those warriors were from different forces in the Endless Sea, including demon dwellers. The most unbelievable thing in the letter is that he has cut off one arm of Demon Master Ma Qidan, and has also injured the hierarch of the Corpses God Sect and the Queen of Sky Fan Shangyun of Yinyang Wonderland. What? The bodies of Xia Shenmao and Zhou Yu were shivering violently. They simultaneously screamed out loud while their eyes glinted with a trace of both joy and fear. On a light boat. Shuryan was sitting straight on a boat with an emotionless face, avoiding crowded seas, moving toward the east. Glittering starlight shone down. He quietly perceived the marvelousness of the star martial spirit, using it to absorb the star power of the sky and earth, indulging himself in the star martial spirit, feeling the star's trajectory, and experiencing the moving principle of the stars in the world. Flows of spiritual power that were invisible to ordinary people gradually penetrated his body, becoming nutrients for the star martial spirit. The painful lesson on the Sun Island had taught him that only superior strength that went beyond all others would allow him to dominate this world and do whatever he wanted. Only breaking through new realms would make things happen as he pleased. He didn't want to see his beloved ones become dead bodies. The death of Jiao Hani, Linda, and Xia Shenchuan had ignited an ambitious flame of becoming powerful inside his heart. After leaving the Sun Island, everything he had done was to enhance his body's strength. Killing demon dwellers and warriors of the Endless Sea or ravaging others was the goal of becoming stronger as fast as possible. Every day, every night, every hour, every moment, he was always sinking deep in thought. He thought about the marvelousness of different martial techniques, experienced the essence of various strengths, and tried to perceive and comprehend all of them. He never relaxed. Instead, it looked like he was possessed by the devil. Chapter 360. The Northern Dipper Net. Chapter 360. The Northern Dipper Net. The sun went down and then came up again. Shuryen was sitting on the wooden boat. He closed his eyes meditating during the day and watched the starry sky at night with fascination. In the desolate god palace of the three-god sect, he had soaked himself in the star pond, opening the star martial spirit, through which he learned how to use the power of starlight, star shield, and star manipulation. Starlight was a martial technique that followed the magical trajectory of the stars in the sky. Star shield used the star power to release star wings to escape. Star manipulation could be obtained after having comprehended the stars, using the star power as an attacking method. He assumed that he had thoroughly comprehended the meaning of starlight and star shield, as he could combine these two types to exert power in a battle and increase his combat effectiveness. As for the star manipulation, the most profound one to master thoroughly, one was required to understand the operation rules of the stars in the sky and also know their true meaning in the heaven and earth. Therefore, Shuryen put more effort to study star manipulation as he felt that it was very mysteriously unpredictable and seemed to contain endless possibilities. It was as if the true mystery of the star martial spirit stayed hidden on the star manipulation. Thus, it was only until he had a profound understanding of the star manipulation that he would then truly comprehend the star martial spirit and be able to perform it everywhere to reach a new realm. Late at night, stars were like gems shining and twinkling in the dark velvet sky. In the primitive age, when the Grace mainland had just been established, the stars in the sky had existed as early as anyone could remember, maybe since the beginning of time. The history of those stars was far older than that of the Grace mainland. Endless mysteries and many truths about heaven and earth stayed hidden in the vast sea of stars. The more he watched the stars, the smaller he felt in this world. He had a premonition that once he understood the mystery of the stars in the sky, he could escape the confinement of the Grace mainland and enter the galaxy to explore the infinite mysteries there. His restful mind submerged in the ethereal realm. He looked at the stars, which looked like gems filling the entire sky, while feeling a marvelous connection with them through the star martial spirit. The connection was very delicate. He tried to release a small trickle of his soul consciousness toward the sky, slowly penetrating the immense sea of stars. However, every time his soul consciousness drifted above the clouds in the sky and was about to escape the constraint of the Grace mainland, his mind became sluggish and distracted. The strand of soul consciousness, which had been released, would instantly return to his body. There always existed a wall in the dark. This wall seemed to exist at the horizon of the Grace mainland and shackled his martial spirit. Every time he wanted to pass through this wall, he was affected by its power, which led to his martial spirit's failure and destroyed all his efforts. He didn't give up, but kept trying again and again. He launched his soul consciousness to the sky every night, trying to get rid of the wall's barricade. However, all of his attempts failed. As soon as he is close to touching the wall, he instantly failed. After countless unsuccessful attempts and innumerable failures, he finally came to a conclusion, which was that it must be due to his unqualified realm. Without reaching a certain realm, his soul consciousness would be affected by the wall's power. Once his soul consciousness came close to the wall, a force would immediately push it back to his body, and thus he would no longer be able to feel the existence of the wall. He gradually affirmed that only when he had increased his consciousness and upgraded his realm, he could touch that wall, drilling through it to enter the vast sky and understand the true meaning of the star's operation. Although he had encountered many failures, it didn't mean he gained nothing. Numerous trials of releasing the soul consciousness to the sky were also a process of condensing the soul consciousness, making it grow stronger. Thus, the covering range of his soul consciousness expanded a little, and the method of using the soul consciousness became more profound than before. Previously, when he had released his soul consciousness, he could only sense some volatilities of life within a radius of a few hundred miles. After many attempts, his soul consciousness could now cover a range of thousands of miles. Except for warriors with a profound cultivation base who could retrieve their soul fluctuations, nothing could escape his induction, whether it were human fluctuations or beasts' activities. Although Shuryen temporarily left the soul consciousness penetration in the vast sea of stars aside, he still kept concentrating, watching, and studying the stars. During the day, he rested his mind and meditated, experiencing any changes of the star martial art. At night, he continued gazing at the stars. While watching the stars, he engulfed his spirit into them, checking the changes of the star martial spirit in correspondence with the stars in the sky, feeling their connections, studying the related mysteries, and trying to discover a higher level of star manipulation. There were countless star domains in the sky. Plenty of stars created the star manipulation. With mindful observation, a star domain looked like a natural, mysterious star formation, which had its typical trajectory and its own marvelousness. When he could understand that the stars in the sky were divided into different star domains, and each of which had its own unique magic, he would not waste more time paying attention to the entire star sky. Instead, he would focus only on just one star domain. He then put all of his mind and effort to study the closest star domain, where he could easily perceive the Big Dipper. He concentrated his eyes and mind only on the Big Dipper's star domain, watching 7 twinkling stars. It was unknown how many nights had passed. One day, when the night fell, the Big Dipper appeared in the star domain that he had been gazing at. The Big Dipper, formerly as small as a piece of grain, now seemed to gradually enlarge. The distance between him and the Big Dipper seemed to be shorter. The Big Dipper's twinkling dots started to appear in his eyes. The star martial spirit in his heart also had 7 stars, which somehow corresponded with the Big Dipper and made a connection with the stars in his eyes. The Big Dipper used to be as small as a piece of grain, but now it was getting bigger in his eyes. It was unknown how much time had passed. Under his attentive look, the Big Dipper's light in his eyes had suppressed all the other stars in the sky. The Big Dipper had been very small, just like a grain of rice, but it now suddenly became as big and dazzling as 7 mountains. In his eyes, the Big Dipper in the sky had become 7 enormous star mountains, and the distance between him and them was now extremely close. Abruptly, the star martial spirit in his body flashed up at the same time as the 7 stars in his eyes. In the dark, the Big Dipper also seemed to transmit 7 streams of light, creating a connection with him. Something in his head convulsed. When he was in a daze, a light suddenly flashed up. At this moment, his soul consciousness suddenly flew out and attached to the 7 stars. He felt like his soul consciousness was wandering around the Big Dipper, leaving the Grace mainland and entering the vast star domain of the Big Dipper. He silently perceived all of these during an unknown amount of time, through an unknown number of spaces, passionate and tipsy as if he was possessed by the devil. Fading at night and reappearing in daylight, however, in his mind, the Big Dipper was always bright and immortal regardless of day or night. It seemed to be a long-term phenomenon that had existed for countless years. His host's soul flew out from his head, quietly suspended in the sea of consciousness. He raised his head looking at the sky, feeling like the Big Dipper was at his fingertips. With such a state of mind, his body didn't move, his eyes didn't even blink as he stared at the sky. He was in a stupor for more than half a month. Within half a month, it seemed like he had entered a secret scene where he then realized the truth of heaven and earth. Profound chi in his body continued flowing down to the wooden boat, which was quietly sailing on the desolate sea, moving toward the east. Time flew by. Late at night, Shuryen was still looking at the sky. The brighter the 7 stars in his eyes were, the more frantically his heart was pounding. 7 streams of starlight, which naked eyes could see, looked like 7 springs pouring down from the sky, crossing the space barriers and appearing above Shuryen's head. 7 transparent streams of starlight like springs flooded down. Although Shuryen couldn't directly absorb them, he could still feel the mysterious intimidation. 7 springs condensed into 7 meteorites, forming and maintaining the Big Dipper's formation while moving continually. His eyes and the star martial spirit suddenly were ablaze. Shuryen sat straight on the wooden boat as if he could control the 7 meteorites. Wherever his eyes moved, the meteorites flew accordingly. Standing in front of his eyes was a reef that looked like an imposing mountain emerging from the sea. When his eyes moved over them, the 7 meteorites were still revolving, emitting starlight to all directions, and then suddenly rushed toward him. Boom, boom. An earth-shaking impact occurred when all 7 of the meteorites collided on the jutted reef. Countless beams of starlight sparked on the reef, turning a mountain-like rock into ashes, and thus the reef no longer existed in this world. In the huge explosion, Shurian's eyes restored their consciousness. The 7 stars gradually disappeared, but his eyes were full of stars glowing in the dark. Since the borrowed power of the Big Dipper displayed the profound meaning of the star manipulation, I will call it Northern Dipper Net, Shurian murmured with a low voice and bowed his head, revealing a smile. Chapter 361. Top-Class Warriors. Chapter 361. Top-Class Warriors. Late at night, the moon appeared like a silver tray hanging over the Thousand-Sword Peak. Gu Shao, Yu Qin, Dong Fengju, Qingming, the Queen of Sky, and the King of Earth were closing their eyes, sitting with solemn faces on the Thousand-Sword Peel. They appeared to be waiting for someone. Not long after, dazzling fires came from the west as the sun god Tang Yuanan rode alone on the flame unicorn, stopping among the 6 god realm warriors. He looked at them coldly and then spoke up, "I don't know why have you called me here." When Tang Yuanan was talking, the sun power of his body condensed a scorching aura slowly spreading out from his body, covering everyone. The 6 people of Gu Shao's group suddenly opened their eyes and looked toward Tang Yuanan simultaneously. "Bring Shurian out." Gu Shao took a deep breath. His pupils looked like 2 sharp swords, dashing toward Tang Yuanan. Tang Yuanan's face slightly changed. He looked at Gu Shao, shifting his eyes to the others, and said coldly, "Is this the decision of all 6 of you?" The group of them nodded altogether with unfriendly manners. "I don't have him," Tang Yuanan snorted, revealing a cold smile. He shook his head. "If you couldn't find him, why would you rely on asking me? Is the 3 god sect that easy to bully?" "Hierarchy Tang," Qingming shouted solemnly. Clusters of green fires flickered in his eyes, which were glinting with a vicious trace. "After the battle between that little rascal and Ma Qidun, you were the one who took him away. Although he has come out later, you certainly have a connection with him somehow." The Queen of Sky Fan Shang Yun also sneered. "During this time, we have been searching the entire Hangluo Sea. We have even checked around in the Kiara Sea, but we couldn't find that little rascal's whereabouts. The Endless Sea is very big, and many of us have exerted our God Realm cultivation base to search for him. However, we couldn't find anything, not even a trace. If you didn't hide him, who else did? Was it the remnant of the Yang family? As I have said, he is not in my hand." Tang Yuanan beamed a cold smile and continued, "The 3 of you have united to deal with him, but still let him escape. And now, you assumed that you could use your soul consciousness to find him? Although I don't know how mysterious he is, I think if he could escape your siege, he would absolutely be able to avoid the search of your soul consciousness. You come to me after you couldn't track him down yourselves. How rational is that?" "Hierarchy Tang." Yu Qin revealed a faint smile and said, "We have not only united, but we have also borrowed secret techniques, using the God Realm's soul consciousness together with secret treasures of the Spirit Treasure Wonderland to carry the search to the entire Hangluo Sea and the Kiara Sea. However, we still couldn't find his trace. Not to mention that little rascal has only the Nirvana Realm, so even if he had the God Realm cultivation base, he shouldn't be able to escape from us when we join forces. Only the God Palace on the seabed of the 3 god sect with strange formations can prevent our soul consciousness. If he is not at your place, where else can he be? Don't waste time talking with him." Qingming was livid with rage, standing up while the superb adjoined corpse's flame was burning up in his eyes. "If we unite together, destroying the 3 god sect is not a difficult matter. After demon dwellers had invaded the Endless Sea, the 3 god sect hasn't joined forces with us nor participated in our actions. Apparently, they have wicked intentions. That little rascal progresses every day, and thus his intimidation is growing larger every day. When he really grows up, none of us can survive." "That's right," Fan Xiangyun also stood up and said. "Instead of being wary of him day and night, We'd better solve it completely once and for all. The faces of Gu Xiao's and Yu Qin's group looked unfriendly. They seemed to have the intention of joining forces to kill Tang Yuanan. But at this moment, the moon in the sky suddenly brightened up. A pretty figure quietly appeared under the moonlight. A beautiful silhouette flew out from that full moon-shaped circle of light. That circle of light absorbed the moonlight in the air and then fell to a 5,000-meter-high mountain beside the Thousand-Sword Peak. Boom, boom, boom. That circle of light hit that 5,000-meter-high mountain and thus instantly split and was broken down into countless stones. Interwoven with the moonlight, a full moon-shaped circle of light like the moon god, sharp blade quickly flew to the mountain, crushed it into innumerable broken stone pieces, and thus made it collapse instantly. A horrible oppressing pressure pressed down from that beautiful silhouette, enveloping everyone. The moonlight in the sky hastily condensed and congregated at that shadow, making her momentum soar crazily and endlessly. The faces of the group of Gu Xiao and Yu Qin were suddenly discolored. They looked at that beautiful silhouette with fear. Want to destroy my three-god sect? Are you ready to receive your own sect's consequences? The pretty silhouette was vaguely floating in the moonlight. The voice was clear but cold, containing a cruel and frightening tone, clearly showing a threat. 6 god realm warriors all quieted down. Shurian is not in the three-god sect. If you really want a war, then we are willing to serve you. Being surrounded with the moonlight, that beautiful silhouette coldly said. Demon Dweller's threats have not been solved yet, but you still want to destroy our three-god sect. And then you assume that you are those who can save the Endless Sea? It is ridiculous. After having finished talking, that appealing silhouette turned into a streak of moonlight and left. The sun god Tang Yuanan sneered coldly and said to the people of Gu Xiao's group, "It is my honor to introduce to you the moon god, Ouyang Lushuang. She has just entered the god realm not long ago. Before that, she had absorbed the 1,000-year moonlight and had been able to integrate the moon power of the ether. In this vast endless sea, except for Chao Qiudao and Yang Yitian, I am afraid that no one can match her strength. If you don't believe it, you can try." After having finished his words, without concerning with the horrified look on the faces of Gu Xiao's group, Tang Yuanan rode the flame unicorn, turning into streaks of sunlight, and quickly left. The 6 people, including Gu Xiao, Yu Qin, Qingming, the Queen of Sky, the King of Earth, and Dong Fangju looked at each other, and then shifted their eyes to the high mountain that had just collapsed, all quieted down with grimaces on their faces. The Dark Demon Area. Fierce, towering white bone columns blockaded the Yang Tian Emperor, making his skin all disappear. Standing on the bone stage inside the formation technique, Yang Tian Emperor had become a blood-dripping skeleton, which had only tendons attaching it to the skeleton. He looked terrible while his face was a mix of blood and flesh. It looked like he had been tortured to death. There was a white bones Dharma body standing next to the bone stage. At this moment, that white bones Dharma body spoke up, "Yang Tian Emperor, do you want to feel more comfortable?" On the bone stage, Yang Tian Emperor's eyes, which were now only bare sockets without skin or flesh, were still just as bright and sparkling as before. He calmly looked at that white bones Dharma body and then said, "You are just wasting your time." Bo soon revealed a cold smile. "This is your last chance. The corpse soul bridge will be completed in several days. In 3 days, Qi Yan's and my real body will officially step into the Endless Sea. In a maximum of 15 days, the 3 great dark kings of the underworld will also enter the Endless Sea. By that time, the Endless Sea's people will be in misery, and it will become the paradise of demon and dark dwellers." Yang Tian Emperor's eyes finally revealed a glint of terrified light. His bloody face slightly shivered, but he still didn't say anything. "Yang Tian Emperor, you are very good at playing tricks. I don't know what kind of tricks you use to help the Yang family stay hidden in the demon area. I have been searching around but couldn't find anything. If it weren't because you had this arrangement, there wouldn't be a way for them to prevent my soul consciousness from finding them just by relying on their own ability," Bassoon snorted. "For 1,000 years, the Yang family has always gone in and out of the 4th demon area. The time I have stayed here is even longer than our time in the Endless Sea. My understanding of this demon area is not less than yours. Even you, Bosun, still don't know there are some strange areas in this land. Young Tian Emperor proudly smiled and said, even if I die, as long as they follow my orders, you will never find them. The area that you explored last time is just a fake one that I set up. After going there, perhaps you suffered quite of a loss. A flame rose up in the sockets of the White Bones Dharma body. That's right. We thought that we found the Yang family's hiding place, but then realized that it was a trap. Many of my men were killed, but thanks to their death, the progress of building the Corpse Soul Bridge has been accelerated. As you know, I cannot kill my own family members for the Corpse Soul Bridge. Because of your arrangement, the completion of the bridge is getting much closer. I actually should thank you. Young Tian Emperor's eyes changed afterward. You have a good grandson. That little rascal Shurian has caused us many troubles in the Endless Sea. He has even cut off one of Ma Qidun's arms. I don't know what you have done to that brat so that he, with his Earth Realm cultivation base, could injure Ma Qidun, who had the boundless demon saber in his hand. Bosun beamed a cold smile and continued, however, it is in the past. Once my real body enters the Endless Sea, the only pawn you have left will easily be killed. Your successor will have his soul scattered. Cut off Ma Qidun's arm? Yang Tian Emperor's eyes brightened, and he suddenly burst into laughter. So after all, it is not a waste to spend the immortal blood for him. He is really the lucky star of the Yang family. I had known that there were some mysterious things in his body, but I never thought that he could be exceptionally outstanding like this. Ha ha ha, brilliant kid. It seems that I still underestimate him. That little rascal is the same as you, making enemies everywhere. Currently, not only are we searching for him, but forces in the Endless Sea are also hunting him down. I have heard that he has escaped the siege of Qingming, the Queen of Sky, and the King of Earth. Moreover, he has injured the Queen of Sky severely. This brat is too much like you. He doesn't care about life and death or letting someone in his eyes. Bosun looked excited. Unfortunately, as for human beings, that characteristic is nothing different from bringing the perdition. We can obviously imagine his outcome. Human beings don't respect strong top-class warriors or potential youths. It is your greatest sorrow. A sign of sadness gleamed in Yang Tian Emperor's eyes. He nodded. Yes, I know how those people are. I hope he can have my luck this year and overcome all the bad things. If he doesn't die this time, his achievement in the future will surely be much more than mine. Ha ha ha. Those kinds of people like Qingming, Fan Shangyun, and the King of Earth used to conceal when seeing me before. I really want to see them being pursued everywhere they go and killed by Shurian. Ha ha ha, I do believe that day will come. Arrogant. Bosun snorted coldly. You just wait and see. In a maximum of 1.5 years, I am sure I will bring that kid's head to you. As soon as he finished his words, flames inside the White Bones Dharma's pupils disappeared. Bosun's host's soul had left. Yang Tian Emperor kept silent for a long while before revealing a faint smile and muttering, good kid. Wait a little bit more. We will see each other very soon. In this world, who can really confine me? You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.